marido, no saben guisar un huevo, ya quieren tener marido. Las cueras de California no saben hacer tortillas, lo que ponen en la mesa es pan con mantequilla. A la hora de la cena, cuando falta la cerveza, luego van diciendo, ay me duele la cabeza. Cuando se muera mi suegra, le entierro boca abajo, para si quiere salirse, la sumo más abajo. Ya con esta me despido, con la güera de Califas, ojalá que usted se encuentre una güera de San Quilma.
Buenas tardes. Good evening. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center. I'm Cristina Ballí, and I'm the executive director here. Also, director of this year 40th annual Tejano Conjunto Festival. So welcome to the 40th annual Tejano Conjunto Festival. Of course, we're very excited and proud. This is a historical year for the festival. Not only are we coming back after a 2-year absence from the park, we did have the 39th annual festival last year in 2021, but we streamed it live from here, from the theater, from the Guadalupe Theater. So it wasn't the full-blown version at the park, the way we're used to having it. So this year, now we're returning, and on the occasion of this special anniversary, we have lots of programs. 10 months ago, I thought it would be a good idea to have 8 days of programming. Now that we're here in the middle of it, we're like, oh my God, what were we thinking? But it's been great. Every program that we have scheduled every day is a wonderful program. We're really diving deep into the subject of Texas Mexican music. And here at the Guadalupe, we have the opportunity, to do that. Of course, we like to enjoy the music and just have a good time and enjoy it, but we like to reflect on it. We like to talk about what it means, what it means for us, what it says about us, Tejanos, here. So we like to take these opportunities, to do that, to reflect and encourage, the more analysis, more writing, more reflection. Tonight, we have 2 very special presentations. One of them, of course, that is something that all of you are here for right now and are very excited about. It is a book reading by none other than Little Joe of Little Joe y la Familia, which we're very excited to hear about, along with his co-author, Emma Gonzalez, who helped write the autobiography or memoirs. One thing we don't have enough of is books, on our stories, de nuestra música, de nuestra gente, what this music says about our history. So that's why this book by Little Joe is very, very, very important. So we have the work documented, and researchers can come and pull it out and use it, to reference it. And so we want more books of Texas Mexican music. We want more books, and we also want more films. We want more plays. Tomorrow we are going to have an entire day of films that we are going to present here at the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Theater. Starting at noon tomorrow, we have lots of films by Chris Strockwitz, including Chulas Fronteras and Del Mero Corazón. Now, Chulas Fronteras is a classic, but it's a 50-year-old documentary, a 50-year-old film. And then our Tejano documentarian of our music is, of course, Hector Galan. He's done the films, documentaries like Songs of the Homeland, Accordion Dreams, also a newer one on The Big Squeeze, documenting the young people that are carrying on the accordion tradition. And then we're going to be showing tomorrow some special videos like a play, Conjunto Blues by Nicolás Valdés, that was videotaped into kind of a movie film edition. That was a play performed here at the Guadalupe Theater. And then we have some surprises, and we have some footage from the very, very first Tejano Conjunto Festival, produced in 1982 at Market Square. We're going to be showing that tomorrow. I actually don't know what time yet. We're still figuring out the schedule. But that's going to be, I think we're going to show that at noon. So I know it's during the daytime. Sorry, we couldn't work it out on the weekends because we just have too much going on. But maybe you can take a lunch hour and you can have conjunto music for lunch. And you can come to the Guadalupe Theater, bring your sack lunch, y se vienen aquí a comer su lonche, and you can enjoy, footage from the very first 1 hour, the best of Tejano Conjunto Festival from 1982, performed from Market Square. We're going to show that here tomorrow. So all day long, empezando a mediodía from noon to the evening, we're going to be showing films all day. And then we're going to be showing some clips, some really fun clips of very special historic things that happened, throughout the years. We're going to have footage of Narciso Martinez, like actual footage of Narciso Martinez playing at the Conjunto Festival. Santiago Jiménez Sr., Valerio Longoria, Esteban Jordán, all the greats. We're going to have them. So, si pueden venir mañana a mediodía, you can. Or it's going to be called the Conjunto for Lunch series. Maybe in the future we'll do something like that. So make plans to come out. Y luego en la tarde, we're going to have special presentations zoomed in by Chris Strockwitz and Hector Galan, but they will be joining us live via Zoom, and so we're going to have an opportunity to have a conversation with them, a little discussion with them, to talk about their films, which are now classics, which are really important to our culture because they're what documented our culture. And then what we want to know is, we want to know who's going to do this next, who's going to be the next generation of filmmakers, and how can we encourage that, porque se batalla, se batalla mucho. Of course, this takes money, right? We know that. It takes money and effort, time, that we don't always have. So we want to have the discussion about how to encourage more books, how to encourage more films, how to encourage more documentation of all of this. In case you don't know, some of you I know already made your way out to our brand new Guadalupe Latino bookstore, which is right across the street. We opened it in October. We're building up an entire section on Texas Mexican music. We have several books there for sale tonight. We have all of Little Joe's books there. When he's done here, he's going to move over to the bookstore for a book signing. Allá, he will sign your books over there, okay? Not in here. He will sign your books over there at the bookstore, and just give him a chance to get over there after he's done here, okay? Denle chance que llegue para allá, and then he will sign your books. They will be there available for sale, and we have more books available for sale, Max Baca's book. And then we're going to take a little intermission when he's done, y vamos a seguir la discusión. We're going to come back here at 7. We're going to have a big panel presentation by a lot of cultural workers. Some of them are here right now. Linda Escobar, I see Jerry Benavides. We're going to have several others. Rudy Treviño. We're going to have some scholars. Alejandro Wolbert Pérez. We're going to have Luis Díaz-Santana de Monterrey talking about música ranchera. And I know I'm going to forget some. I know I don't have the list right in front of me. But we're going to have a panel of scholars and culture workers to talk about the state of conjunto music now. Where are we now, and where are we going in the future, for conjunto and Tejano music? Okay, so, enough announcements. I just do need to let everybody know that tonight's program is very generally sponsored by AARP, who really supports all of our programming at the Guadalupe, so that's AARP Texas, and also by UTSA. UTSA holds some of the Guadalupe's archives and a lot of archival footage from these festivals. The footage that we're going to show tomorrow from that 1982 Conjunto Festival was digitized by UTSA. So we're very grateful that UTSA is helping us that way, and they're also sponsoring tonight's and tomorrow's programs. So les damos muchas gracias. Thank you. Also sponsoring tonight's program is the Department of Arts and Culture of the City of San Antonio and Texas Commission on the Arts. And we received generous funding from the Mellon Foundation and the Ford Foundation. Okay, so now to start the program, I think none of us, he doesn't need much introduction, but Little Joe of Little Joe y la Familia has been trailblazer and a pioneer in Tejano music, in Orquesta Tejana. He has created some of the classic sound and helped solidify the classic sound of música tejana, of a generation. One of his songs is, of course, known as the emblem of the Chicano, or also called the Chicano National Anthem, which is the classic Las Nubes. And we are fortunate enough that Miss Emma Gonzalez has helped him write his memoirs, and that we get to enjoy now in his book, No Llore Chingon. So please help me welcome on this stage, a great honor to have him, Little Joe.
Wow, I can reach this microphone. Well, good morning, folks. My name's Jose Maria de Leon Hernandez, and I'm an alcoholic. And oh, I'm sorry, Emma, that's not till next week. I got a little confused because I see a lot of faces I see at those meetings. You thought I'd let you slide. I won't mention your name if you bring me a shot of tequila. I am so honored, really, and almost speechless, and I never stopped talking. My dad's nickname was La Cotorra, the parakeet, and I don't know that I got any of his talents, but I sure got the talking. I got that down. But gracias for, on behalf of everyone in the panel and on behalf of all the artists that have traveled through this country, the Chicano artists. I've been on the road for over 60 years, 62 years to be exact. Music's taken me to some beautiful and wonderful places that have been totally educational for me. I've had the great opportunity to tour all over Europe, all over Japan several times, 4 or 5 times each country, parts of Mexico and across the United States. And As you'll read in the book, I'm a 7th grade dropout, and I started my music career at that time, and you'll read about my dad being in prison in 1955 when I first got paid $5 for performing. I wasn't singing because I was just too shy to do that. But $5 back then meant me, I didn't have to pick 500 pounds at a penny a pound. That's what we were doing, the family, my dad and mom's family. So while my dad was away in prison, music was a tool for me, a conduit to helping really feed the family. I had 6 siblings to look after. My older brothers and sisters were all gone. The girls married and the boys in the military. So it's been a long road for me. And through the years, I've recognized some great talents that young kids, even children, possess. And I've also noticed that, unfortunately, many times it starts at home and the parents and the family don't support them or encourage them. And that's where it starts, or that's where it started for me. I had that support from the very beginning. My biggest fans were my dad and mom, of course, all my brothers and sisters, and 15,000 cousins, so that helped. But each generation bring their own mix to the table. And I was saying to Nicholas during the interview that I was never, I'm overrated. I was never good enough to copy anybody, maybe in style and form, but non-musically, I just not good enough to copy other artists. So I had to do things my way. I had to put my own mix, the way I feel it, the way I can do it. Lucky for me, I know my limitations, so I don't embarrass myself too often, but I do what I can with the music my way, and it's worked for me wonderfully all these years. So I'm not musically taught, so I didn't know the do's and don'ts. It's like, you can't do that. Oh, no, watch. So I do it, and I love experimenting with music. It's a never-ending science. And I've recorded with trio, conjunto, country bands, con mariachi, with my band. It's just been incredible for me to experiment with all these different genres of music in both English and Spanish. I would bore myself to death if I had to play just one style of music. I won't do it. And so I can mix the blues, the rock and roll, rancheras, and just all kinds of music, the classics, the beautiful boleros that aren't popular like they used to be in my day. I've had that opportunity and that liberty to do that. When I joined, I signed up with one of the major labels. The first one gave me full control of my artistic recordings, whatever I was going to do. The second label wanted to assign me to a producer and a director, so I didn't last there very long because I need it and I need to do things the way I feel them. And as I've gotten younger through the years, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. I've realized how important time is and how life is such an incredible gift. Every day is so special, so we should not waste it doing things that others want you to do if you feel that you can't or don't want to, if you have your own inspirations to produce. And for me, life is not yesterday or this morning or tomorrow night. Life is right now. Any minute now while I'm speaking, I could have a heart attack. Anything can happen. I plan for tomorrow. But right here and now, I live the moment. And that has really helped me produce the music that I do because, example, I was in London on one of those double-decker buses, and we're downtown, and I get off the bus, and I'm looking around like, Chinga, what's this cotton picker doing in London? I was like, wow. And I look around, and on the spot, I see lovers everywhere, feel the magic in the air, but my heart is still with you. People chatting here and there on a crowded avenue, but my heart is still with you. So that's how that song started the minute I got off the bus. And that's actually a jazz tune, which I write jazz music that I don't always get to record and you don't always get to hear because you want to hear por una mujer casada. En las nubes, en por un amor, y recuerdas que te amigo. But if you give a child, a kid, it doesn't have to be a young person, the opportunity, and you support them and you encourage them. Not singing, playing, I don't know how many instruments but every person, you, all of us, have a gift. Not only the gift of life, but the gift of an ability to do something special, whatever that may be. I remember my dad saying, you got to work to be the best. If you're going to be a thief, be a good thief. I knew I would get caught, but anyway, that's me, that's how I feel. And I hope that Emma will consider writing the real Little Joe story. Ooh. And we've been approached by filmmakers with ideas. One said the book should be the movie should be made 60% music and 40% is like. The book is not about, it's about Little Joe, but it's about what I wanted it to be, my family, our family, la gente. And as I said, I've been doing this on the road for over 60 years. So people know about my awards and where I've been, what I've done, almost everything, but on the music side. But I wanted you, the reader, to be inspired by what my story's about. And back in the 80s, I was a real hot potato, and I was working a lot in the country field. And Willie and I had a program going. I did about a dozen of his farm-aid shows all over the country. And I remember at one rehearsal, Willie's a very humorous guy, and he says, Joe, our show's getting too hot, man. We better take it on the road. And every time we did, I was part of the farm-aid show. We always ran the story, or rather the schedule. Willie would bring me on stage. We'd do 3 or 4 songs and throw the schedule off. And I remember the manager and one of the band guys that, they're running over schedule. Somebody tell them. No, I'm not going to tell them. You tell them. No. So that was happening all the time. And I just had such a great time. But more importantly, what it did for me was I could show off mi gente through music, mi cultura through music. And I was able to do this, and I thank Willie for that. But that's what I've tried to do since I became aware that music is magic. It really is. I can't describe it any other way. I go on stage with a stomachache, a headache, a toothache. Music cures that, except with a heartache. And you broke my heart many times. But we should honor all artists, no matter at what level they are. We should promote them. We should praise them, encourage them, and support them. because through music, it's a fact that the world changes. And I hope that when it's said and done about me is that he made a little change. And I hope they think that I brought people together instead of dividing them. And music will decide that in the end for me. So, gracias for your time. I recommend the book because it won those 5 awards for a reason. So when they wanted me to do a movie about Little Joe and music, I said, no, the music is about family. It's about family story. Gracias, Emma, because we also, I'm gonna pat myself on the back. There's a new category at the book club, and it's called the Best Family Story. Is that correct?
Best Family History Book.
I knew that. But that category wasn't there before. Because Emma brought this book, the story, to life. We have a new category in the book club. So gracias for that, Emma. And if I've never done anything in my life, well, worthwhile doing, telling the story and having the book club start that new category is just too much for me to even, wow. Estoy muy, muy agradecido de ustedes y de todos. Les recomiendo el libro porque es la historia de nuestra gente, nuestra raza. Everybody that retired judges and people of all walks of life. Joe, you wrote my story. You wrote my story. I knew when I was picking cotton that there were other people, and now I know millions of people did the work I did and continue to do so. So enjoy the book, and it's a real story. There's no fake in it, and I made sure that everything that I could remember that was true is in the book. And again, les agradezco for having me here today. Bless you.
All right, we're going to take a couple of questions, just like 2 questions. So whoever raises their hand first gets to ask a question. A ver acá. Yes, sir. And we don't have a microphone out, so just yell your question.
I don't need a microphone, but I'd like to, with your permission, I'd like to have the author of the book, Ms. Emma Gonzalez, just say a few words before we take questions. I think it would be really important and appreciative of the audience.
Okay, Emma, would you like to come up? Right.
Well, she's part of the panel, so she's going to talk more than me.
2 minutes. He's got a stopwatch.
Yeah.
No, you're good. You're good. Just want to make sure you're okay.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here, and I'm certainly blessed to be part of this event. I'm Emma Gonzalez. I'm the author, the authentic author of the book, Little Joe, No Llore Chingon. Joe and I collaborated for many years. No, approximately 2 years in the making before we could finish the book. But we spent a lot of time with each other. I didn't know who Joe was. I didn't follow his music until 25 years ago when I heard one of his songs that just tagged in my heart. And I said, who is this guy? So I called the radio station. I said, who's playing that song? Who's that author? Or who's that singer? And the receptionist blared it out. It's Little Joe. I said, well, give me the name of the song. And it was Feeding Her Memory. That got me. I went to the nearest store and bought the cassette. And 25 years later, without me knowing who this gentleman was, he asked me to write his life story. So it's fate that we were brought together. Our background is very similar. I was a migrant child at the age of 5 years old, working in the sugar beet fields in Colorado. And in the wintertime, we come pick cotton in what's left over in West Texas. So we're 2 cotton pickers. That is our common thread. We lived lives of migrants, and we know what struggles we lived and what our families went through. So for me, writing this story was heartwarming. I cried a lot of times. I called him and said, I'm crying over this story, Joe. He said, no llore chingona, finish it. So it's been my pleasure and a journey with Joe and his family, incredible family that I got to know. And officially, I was adopted into the Hernandez La Familia. So I hope you enjoy the stories that I wrote in there. Joe helped me a lot with a lot of his feelings that he shared with me to capture those feelings in the stories, because that's very critical. What was this man feeling on that important story that he was telling me? And that's hard for an author to do, because you have to feel it as well and write it for him. So thank you so much for being here and allowing me to speak a couple of minutes on behalf of the book. And yeah, we're pending another book, and that's going to be XXX rated. We'll see. Gracias. Muchísimas gracias.
Okay, now if anybody has a question for the authors, we'll go ahead and take a question over here.
So what is the basis for No Llores Chinguano? You know, I know it seems like part of the story, but was there one particular story that you had about the title?
And let me just repeat it, because we are streaming, we are live streaming, so I want to make sure that whoever's listening online on Facebook or on YouTube can hear the question. And the question was, where does the phrase "no llore chingon" come from? You know, why that phrase? Is it part of a story of, you know, one of his many adventures? So yeah, where does that come from?
Is this mic light?
Let's see. Let's see if it's, yeah, they're turning it on. They're turning it on.
Turn me on. Yes, yes. Testing, am I too loud? I'm okay. You guys are okay?
You're good.
Not bursting your ears? I'm trying. Yes? Good, thank you. Where'd Chingon come from? Actually, I grew up listening to that all my life, because my dad would say we'd fall and trip and whatever, get hurt. Levántese, levántese, no llore, Chingon, no llore. And, you know, that's all my life, that was there. No llore, Chingon. But many times I've had to look in the mirror and see myself back at me, especially when I experienced some really bad things, at least bad at the time. And I've had to really tell myself, no llore, Chingon. I mean, I carry a lot of scars, and I really believe that I got through those difficult times by telling myself, que no llore, Chingon. We have to cry, we need to cry, but there's times when we just gotta hold back. So that's been there all my life, and when I thought of the title, it was, for me, it was so easy, because no matter what happens, no llore, Chingon. Los hombres no lloran. But we do. Thank you.
That is beautiful, beautiful, wise words of advice. Yes, one more question over here, and then one more question over here.
I just wanted to also thank you. You know, during the Vietnam era, we listened to your songs when we were overseas. But can you talk about some of the obstacles, racisms that you went through, primarily in the 50s, 60s, that time period? What are some of the obstacles that you?
And to repeat the question, we're talking about the Vietnam era and how this music was very encouraging during that time for Chicanos. And they're asking Little Joe what kind of racism and obstacles he faced during that time.
You know, unfortunately, brother, that's still out there and out in the open, because Trump made it okay. That's a fact. There's a lot of things happening that were always there but had not surfaced. But I was born and raised in 1940, October 17, 1940, in Temple, Texas, which is about 150 miles south, or rather north of San Antonio. And I was raised in a totally black neighborhood, except for my grandparents and a tío and a tía that lived in the same neighborhood, till a family, Lopez, moved across the street till I was about 4 or 5 years old. But other than that, it was just a totally black neighborhood. So, you know, all my friends, we slept in each other's home, ate each other's food, and I was blackified before I left the neighborhood. But you know, when you're a kid, you don't understand. But all the signs of for whites only, and you know, as a kid, I didn't understand. I just followed because I went wherever I went. It was my friends were black. But one particular time we were at the Bell Theater downtown Temple, and we walked in, and there's 3 kids, an older kid, who took the rest of us to the movies. And I must have been about 6 or 7 years old. And I remember they ushered them upstairs to the balcony and wanted to keep me downstairs. And I got scared and started crying. I mean, I was with my friends. I didn't understand what was going on. But after that, I just started becoming aware of what was really happening, you know. And that was something in my little hometown. But when I got out on the road and I started traveling, and I couldn't stay in certain hotels because I had black musicians, couldn't eat at certain restaurants, and we either all ate or we all walked out. And I had to sleep in many parks, you know, because they just would not allow the blacks in the hotels and motels. And I had to do a lot of things. But you know what? That didn't discourage me at all. It just pissed me off. And I wanted to do it again and again. And I also learned that music, they cut you a pass, they allow you. So when I started playing the honky-tonks, I wasn't old enough to be in them. But I guess they found me curious or something. But I got away with a lot of stuff. And as time went by, I realized that being brown was actually a plus if you know how to use it. You know, and I got my 10 out in the picking cotton. That's why the song says, I don't lose my suntan like some do when on cloudy days. But yeah, and as I said, unfortunately, that is still out there. But early on, I could smell it. I could tell that, you know, where people, and it's so sad because it's all just ignorant. The worst part is que conozco Chicanos that are racist. That is terrible. There's racism in all walks of life, of all creeds of races, you know. But that's the world, huh? I think the best thing we can do is try ourselves not to be racist and teach our kids not to be racist. I'm sorry you asked a 30-second question, and I give you a story 20 minutes long. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And okay, all right. Just 2 more questions, y ya, rapidito. This lady over here.
Okay, I'm in politics, but I'm really not a politician. I'm an activist. And I really want to ask Joe about Las Nubes, because if there is, when I was barefoot and with the raza mira, if there is one song, and if there's a reason why I'm a huge fan, is because of that song. And I want to hear a little bit about how that song, what that meant to our people, and what it means to us still to this day after I don't know how many years. Thank you.
The question from an activist coming back from the Chicano movement days. She wants to know more about Las Nubes, the classic song Las Nubes, and where that came from. And tell us more about that classic song.
I'm a little short, so I have to stand up. Actually, I recorded Las Nubes differently the first time, and there used to be, I guess, a rule that music, the recordings couldn't go over 2 minutes and 20 seconds or 2 minutes and 15 seconds. All recordings had to be shorter than 220, whatever it was. So I recorded Las Nubes in a different tempo, in a 3/4. 1, 2, 3, nubes que van pasando. So when I started touring California back in the hippie days at the Ashbury Park, I was there freaking out. It's like, and I saw, felt, and got involved in stuff that I was never gonna find here in Texas. Latinismo. Musicians coming from all over the world to San Francisco, to the Bay Area. And the music, Latina, was really happening. I didn't have that here. So I kept touring, and I even moved to San Jose. For a while, I lived in Oakland. That's another story for another time. Oh God! Just quickly, I rented a house. I rented a house for the band, and some lady would come and clean it. And finally, one day, she sees me. Ay, no sabe que aquí hay muchos marihuanos. Gracias a Dios. But all of that just influenced me to where I wanted to. I got not only interested, but I wanted to know more about being Chicano, being Latino, and quiénes somos, cómo somos, and so I wanted to change, and the music always pulled me towards those changes, and I changed the name Latin Heirs to La Familia. Latin Heirs, catching on Latin Heirs, so. And I kept thinking about names, but La Familia just really stuck to me. And because all my family at one point or another worked for me or supported me and helped me along the way. And then I wanted to change the music. So when I came back, I went to Dallas to record Las Nubes again, this time different, in a 2/4 time. 2/4, yeah, no sé qué. And I used the strings from the symphony from Dallas. And I have a compadre that told me, compadre, la raza no quiere eso. It's like, I said, compadre, la raza no sabe lo que quiere. I know what they want. And I captured a certain sound and feeling that just don't grow old. It's like Comparación, Honky Tonk by Bill Doggett, 1955, Honky Tonk. Las Nubes is that when you hear it, the original recording, it's fresh. And again, I was telling the reporter that on YouTube, there's 2 Japanese kids. One's playing guitar, the other one sings Las Nubes in English and Spanish. Because when I toured Japan, they would hum that. And I always thought, I'm going to translate the Spanish, but being raza, I'm too lazy and I haven't done it. Thank you.
All right, one last question. We had a gentleman over here who had a question. Is that Guadalupe San Miguel? Yes, it's on Guadalupe San Miguel. Has a question for Little Joe.
Well, this is sort of a follow-up, very similar to that, but can you talk more about the music you were making in the 50s and 60s, particularly the English music, the rhythm and blues, and then the impact of the Chicano movement on you, and how your perspective changed from the 50s and 60s to the late 60s and 70s. But talk more a little bit about the 50s and 60s.
The question is by a music scholar as well, Guadalupe San Miguel. The influence on Little Joe and his music during the 50s and 60s, where he was doing a lot of blues, and how that changed kind of in the late 60s, going into the 70s, if it was affected by the Chicano movement at all, what the progression of his musicality was for that time.
Duh. Actually, when I started, like all kids at the time in the 50s, I wanted to play rock and roll, and we did, But I was really fortunate because my cousin, who was about 3 years older than I, was real talented kid, great musician, and he was actually teaching me to play guitar, and I was reading books, but he was able to book us when we were 16, 17 years old. We weren't supposed to be in the place I mentioned before, country clubs, country western clubs. Sometimes we played all black crowds, all white crowds, and then of course the Chicano shows, the mixed crowd. But the music that I recorded, some of those beautiful songs that were written 200-300 years ago, example, Por un Amor. I heard that music at my home. My dad, his brothers, sisters sang, played guitars, and compadres, so that ambiente was always in the house. There's always, late at night up until the morning, and I'd sing pistean and whatever else they did. I just remember the house smelled funny, but but so that was always there for me. So I learned some of the beautiful old melodies, old songs, real profound lyrics, and I was, to myself, I was kind of not confused, but astounded that at 9 years old, I liked a song that said, se fue mi prietita y nunca volvió, dejando en mi pecho clavado un puñal de dolor, something like that. Yo pago las otras y que un mariachi me toque un son. Like, why would a kid of 9 years old be interested in that song? But I loved it. And, it just stayed with me through the years. And I got to record a lot of those songs. Later on, as I got older and the Vietnam War came around, of course, my brothers all served, the older brother served in the military. But in 68, 68, I started my first record company, Buena Suerte Records. And I recorded A la Guerra Ya Me Llevan. And back then there were LPs, albums, and they came 25 to a box, I believe it was, 25 or 30 to a box. And I sent boxes and boxes to Vietnam. And La Raza today still, they have all these stories about how they would group together, and how Raza from different states would congregate, and, any animosity that was between, yo soy de aquí, yo soy de allá, the music would erode that. It just, everybody would get together. Every time I hear these stories, it's just so heartwarming for me. And one guy told me that the way they were communicating, they have their codes to communicate and for the enemy not to know what they're saying. They would sing the melody to Little Joe's songs and sing the codes in Spanish and then translate to English. That way they were on the bush and said, wow. So I got to fight Vietnam through my songs. I'm a liar. No, but that's how. And time went on, and then La Raza Unida, the United Farm Workers, the Brown Berets, the Chicanos por la Causa. I marched with all those guys. I supported all those organizations. I still do. I'm feel part of the family of the Chavez because you'll read in the book how I met Chavez actually on the phone. I was doing an interview of defending his name. They called him a communist, and he was listening. When the interview was over, he called, and I thought it was the guy from the radio, and I was I was pissed, and I hear this real soft, calm voice, Little Joe, habla Cesar Chavez. Whoa, and I just called to thank you for your kind words, and it took a while for me to say, what? Says, soy yo, Cesar. So we traded addresses and phone numbers and stuff, and you'll find the letter he wrote me when he got back from wherever he was going. He wrote me a real nice letter, and you'll find several letters in the book, but that's how I met Cesar Chavez. So he always found time to step aside, as busy as he was, to have a one-on-one conversation with me, for whatever reason. But his family, we just became family. And to this day, I'm on call. Whatever I can do for the farm workers, I'll make myself available.
Well, this has been really an honor to have, someone with such a legacy here visiting us at the Guadalupe. Like I said, we try to dive deep into ourselves, our own cultura, our own history and our own culture, and this is definitely a deep reflection that I think many of us can identify with, many people here in the room, and I think that was the reason you wrote this book, because you wanted to have a reflect your life, your family's life, which is the life of so many of us in here.
In the book also, you were asking how I got involved, why, and during those years, and we just celebrated Jose Campos Torres Plaza, and I was so honored to be there and recite the poem that I wrote for him. And in the book, you'll find 22 numbers of Chicanos that died under police custody. And you'll see that none of those policemen were punished. When one morning I got up and I saw the newspaper, the headline was about Jose Campos Torres, how they beat him up, cuffed him. They took him to the station, and the captain there told him, take him to the hospital, because he was so badly beaten up. And instead, they took him just a little ways off from the station and threw him in the bayou, so he drowned, of course. And one morning, I remember reading that in the paper. I had already been marching and protesting and doing all these things because of other deaths de la raza under police custody. And I thought I'll write a song, and I said, no, that's not what I'm going to do. So I wrote this poem, Dios mío, ¿qué será de mí? ¿Qué será de nuestra raza, los verdaderos dueños de este país? Estos blancos y fríos de corazón, están matando a nuestros hermanos, matando de montón. Mataron a Ricardo Morales, lo mataron sin piedad. I'm sorry that got off the names, but anyway, you read that little poem, and 44 years later, the police in Houston finally apologized publicly, and the mayor Turner there, which is a good guy, allocated some funds, and they have a beautiful plaza, and they're still working on it, and a statue and a mural de Jose Campos Torres 44 years later. Also, part of that story is Santos Rodríguez. Mataron a Santos Rodríguez, lo mataron sin piedad. ¿Qué crimen tan terrible podría haber cometido un niño de 11 años de edad? Two kids walking home, and they took a shortcut through a service station that was shut down, and the cops saw them, picked them up, put one in front seat, one in the back seat, and they're playing Russian roulette with one of the kids. A gun goes off, and it blows the little kid's brains, and his little brother's watching all this. They got off. So if that doesn't piss you off, I don't know what would, So all of that, it just brought rage and sorrow and determination on my part. And the sad part is that I just couldn't find enough people to go with me. But ahora que they did the presentation in Houston, it was such an honor for me because his mother requested that I be there and recite the poem. And todavía nos falta a long ways to go, but it's a beginning. 44 years later, it's better late than ever. So I hope you folks that know about incidents as such to not be afraid to speak up, and not just yourselves, but get involved. And one of the biggest weapon we have is the vote, because we vote who's in charge. And until we get nuestra gente that want to do something on behalf of the needy like us, we're going to continue being slaves of this beautiful, super rich country. So thank you for that question.
Okay, on that note of encouraging you to go for activism, venimos a platicar de la música, pero sabemos que, our life, our civic lives are so much a part of our culture that we have to continue to live every day. So I think Mr. Joe has lots more to say. Tiene mucho que platicar, qué bueno, and you can read about it in his book. If you don't already have it, go across the street at the bookstore there and you can purchase the book, No Llore Chingon. We have it there. We have plenty of copies. And then we're going to walk Mr. Joe over here to across the street so that he can sit there and sign your books for there, okay? Denle chance, to get over there. Give us just a minute to get over there. We're going to take, and of course we're on Chicano time and we're running late already. Of course. We were gonna start this panel, second panel at 7, pero we're on Chicano time. That means we will start our panel at 7:20. Así es que vayan allá a platicar un poquito, pero se regresan, okay? Come back, because we have a very interesting, important discussion with lots of people that we brought together. We're going to keep talking about Tejano music, Conjunto music, where it is now, dónde va, qué vamos a hacer. So we're going to take an intermission. We're going to be back here at 7. I'm only going to give you 10 minutes, okay? 7:15. We're going to start again here at 7:15, okay? We're going to take a little break, come back at 7:15. Everybody, please help me thank Little Joe and Emma Gonzalez for being here with us.
One last point. One of the main reasons I called on Emma to write the book is because I was doing a radio interview and she heard me say that history belongs to those who document it. Yeah. Found that interesting. And then I read her book. She sent me half of the book finished, and I loved what she was writing. And I said, well, here's the cotton picker I've been waiting for to write my cotton picking story. That's how that came about. And Emma, tell about your book.
Well, the book is titled Field Mice, Memoirs of a Migrant Child. It's my life as a little girl working in the sugar beet fields in Colorado at the age of 5, 10 years of that life, 10 months out of each year. I wrote those short stories of that little girl's trauma, what she lived through, and how she came out ahead through education, and the farmer who pulled me out of the fields, a Japanese farmer who saved my life. That's our connection of being migrants and working towards our better lives for ourselves and our families. So that's the title of my book, Field Mice, Memoirs of a Migrant Child.
Okay, we'll see you back here in 10 minutes, okay? We'll be back at 7:15.
Don't believe a word I said.
There you go. Renee from KXPN. Production director. It's been a while, but it's fun to see how I've been missing you every time you come. I saw you at Oyster Bay, but I was working on another stage. That was a good show. It was a good show. I ended up over there with you guys. My wife was over there. And I was yeah. How you been, man? Huh? Okay. Okay. Okay.
cure yo la herida y el sentimiento. Alma tú traerás, pero es
Ando enamorado de un amor que ha lastimado a este pobre corazón. Yo nunca pensaba que fueras tú casada, pero así lo sucedió. Conocí su padre, le llevé flores a su madre, como quiera me engañó. También he jugado un albur con su marido, y al que tiene aquí estoy yo. Tantos amores que yo he tenido, pero de todos ya me olvidé. Tú me quisiste, mi flor ajena, y ahora sufro sin tu querer. Ando enamorado de un amor que ha lastimado a este pobre corazón. Yo nunca pensaba que fueras tú casada, pero así lo sucedió. Conocí su padre, le llevé flores a su madre, como quiera me engañó. También he jugado un albur con su marido, y al que tiene aquí estoy yo. Tantos amores que yo he tenido, pero de todos ya me olvidé. Tú me quisiste, mi flor ajena, y ahora sufro sin tu querer.
somos muy buenos amigos. hace olvidar los desprecios del destino. Yo no tomo por gustar, tomo porque estoy herido. Yo en mí no cabe el dolor, por eso el licor es mi fiel amigo. Yo me paso el tiempo tomando tequilas, oyendo canciones que me hagan llorar. Soy solo un borracho que va por el mundo ahogando las penas con vino y mezcal. Y hoy mi botella de vino, somos muy buenos amigos. Porque ya me hace olvidar los desprecios del destino. Todos saben lo que soy, pero no lo que yo sufro. Pero es que Dios se llevó aquel gran amor que yo quise mucho. Yo me paso el tiempo tomando tequilas, oyendo canciones que me hagan llorar. Soy solo un borracho que va por el mundo ahogando las penas con vino y mezcal.
Por ahí andas diciendo que me vas a engañar, para que por los celos te vuelva yo a rogar, que haces lo que quieras sin ninguna condición, y que vuelvo a aceptarte sin pedirte explicación. Estás equivocada, tú no sabes cómo soy. Si en cuestión de traiciones yo hasta el copete estoy. Si crees que te conviene, písale hondo y dale gas. Tú apenas te andas yendo, yo ya fui, vine para atrás. Estás equivocada, tú no sabes cómo soy. Si en cuestión de traiciones yo hasta el copete estoy. Si crees que te conviene, písale hondo y dale gas. Tú apenas te andas yendo, yo ya fui, vine para atrás. Piensa en lo que te digo, ahí te voy a dejar. Y quizá con el tiempo también aprenderás. Ya no hay el cariño que había entre los dos. Ahí sigue tu camino y que te bendiga Dios. Estás equivocada, tú no sabes cómo soy. Si en cuestión de traiciones yo hasta el copete estoy. Si crees que te conviene, písale hondo y dale gas. Apenas te andas viendo, yo ya fui y vine para atrás. Estás equivocada, tú no sabes cómo soy. Si en cuestión de traiciones yo hasta el copete estoy. Si crees que te conviene, písale hondo y dale gas. Apenas te andas viendo, yo ya fui y vine para atrás.
Sí, señor.
Soy troquero y me gusta ser borracho. Soy parrandero y me gusta enamorar. Cargo dinero para gastar con mis amigos. Y en las cantinas no me gusta panterear. Allá en el valle todititos me conocen. Allá en Macala voy a gozar del amor. En San Benito también tengo una güerita. Y en Santa Rosa me encontré una nueva flor. acordeón. Grito que pa' mí la culpa es pecho, y esa güerita me la llevo en mi camión. Ando borracho, pero a mí me importa, por esas cosas te reprocha el corazón. Aunque mal paguen, vivan todas las mujeres, brindo por ellas aunque sea la perdición. Ponga las copas de cerveza, yo las pago, y reviéntate una polca en el acordeón. Por Dios santito que pa' mí la culpa es pecho, y esa güerita me la llevo en mi camión. Ando borracho, pero a mí me importa, por esas cosas te reprocha el corazón. Aunque mal paguen, vivan todas las mujeres, brindo por ellas aunque sea la perdición. Quiero ponerle su jardín a Pancha,
Check,
mamá,
check, check,
pero
1,
de
2,
ser
check.
de flores coloradas,
Check,
mamá.
1, 2.
Aunque se enojen, solteras y casadas, mamá, solo los ojos de Pancha y mamá. Quiero ponerle su jardín a Pancha, mamá, pero ha de ser de flores exquisitas, mamá. Aunque se enojen toditas las gorditas, mamá, solo los ojos de Pancha y mamá.
Check, check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Check.
Ponerle su jardín a Pancha,
Check,
mamá,
check, check, check,
pero ha de
check.
ser
One,
de flores
1, 2, check, check.
exquisitas, mamá. Aunque se enojen toditas las gorditas, mamá, solo los ojos
Test,
de
test, test.
Pancha
1,
y
2, 1,
mamá.
2.
Quiero ponerle su jardín a Pancha, mamá, pero ha de ser de flores coloradas, mamá. Aunque se enojen solteras y casadas, mamá, solo los ojos de Pancha y mamá. A mí me llaman el gato negro, todas las leyes me buscan ya. Soy peligroso, según lo dice un desalmado y un criminal. Desde muy chico entré a los vicios, todo lo malo conozco yo.
Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, check, check. Check, 1, 2.
Criminales de la región.
Check, check, 1, 2. 1, 2, check, check. 1, 2, check. Check, check, check. 1, 2. 1, 2, check.
Okay, are the mics on? Todos los mics. Are we fired up and ready to go? Yeah, ahora sí. Muy buenas noches. My name is Juan Tejeda, and I was here 42 years ago when we began what we called the Conjunto Festival in '81, and then in 1982 we changed it and expanded it for the first Tejano Conjunto Festival in San Antonio in 1982. And I'm glad to be here 42 years later, this year celebrating the 40th aniversario del Tejano Conjunto Festival in San Antonio. Thank you. And I want to thank all of y'all for being here for this, I think that's going to be very important and enlightening and educational discussion. We have a stellar panel of musicians, of scholars on conjunto and norteño music, of industry professionals, people in radio, in promotions, in social media, in arts administration, in organizing festivales. We have people here. So I'm very excited about being able to be here and to moderate this discussion on the state of conjunto music and the future of conjunto music. I remember there was a time back 40 years ago when people were saying that conjunto music was going to die porque los jóvenes, were not playing it, they weren't dancing to it, they're all getting to rock and roll and rap, and people were saying, se va a acabar, but I think that through the efforts of the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center and other organizations throughout the state, conjunto music, like the Chicano people, like the Mexicano, Tejano people here, we have survived. Our music has survived for over 100 years, and I think that it will continue to survive. If you haven't gotten this, there's a little sheet out in the front desk over here that has brief bios on all of the people that are sitting up here, so that we won't have to read and let you know exactly, but if you can get it before you leave or in a little while, we would appreciate it. We might do a brief introduction as we introduce each one of them, but for the most part, if you can grab one of these, you'll see a brief bio on each one of the people up here that are going to be discussing the state and future of conjunto music. I want to start by saying that we're going to be allowing, since we have so many people up here, we're going to be allowing each one of the individuals to give like a 5-minute opening statement about what they think, coming from their perspective, from their knowledge, what they think that the state of conjunto music is, where it's at right now, and where do we think that it's going to be going? What's the future? After each one of these people present for about 5 minutes, and I know that's very quickly, they can talk a little bit about their research, their work, and again, the state and future of conjunto music. After that, we're going to open it up for discussion amongst the panelists here for a while, and then afterwards, we'll open it up to the public so that you can ask questions of any of the panelists here. And if you have a question to ask or a comment to make, we're asking that you step up to the microphone here because we are recording the affair today for historical purposes. I think we're live streaming it, is that correct? Are we live streaming this program? Yes, we are. So it's going live right now, and we want the people on the panel as well as the audience to be able to hear your questions or comments, okay? So at the end, please step up here. And then after this is over, I think we're going to step over to the Latino bookstore, right? So that we can go over there and purchase some of the books, because various of the people that are here on this panel also, besides Little Joe, who was here earlier, have books on conjunto music, on conjunto norteño también. So I know that Guadalupe San Miguel has a book out, Max Baca has a book out, el señor Luis Díaz-Santana Garza, compañero de Monterrey, ¿verdad, Luis? Has a brand new book out on the relationship between conjunto tejano y el conjunto norteño del norte de México, ¿verdad? So we're going to be talking about that. And you haven't published a book yet, but he's a scholar on conjunto music coming from a very different perspective. And I know that Dan Margolies, I don't think you have a book out on conjunto music, do you, Dan? It's coming. So I'm very excited to be moderating this panel. I don't think that we've ever had such a distinguished panel of musicians, scholars, and industry people. This big, and I think this important in the history, in the 42 years history of the Tejano Conjunto Festival. We have had some other symposiums and conjunto and film and video. I was wearing my mask earlier, and ahora tengo comezón en la nariz. And con el bigote sticking up. And so, again, I'm very proud to be here. So we're going to go ahead and start. What I'd like to do is I'd like to start with the musicians, right? Because without the musicians, there is no conjunto music. They're the creators, they're the performers, they're the ones that work day in and day out. They know, what's happening, during the pandemic for the last 2 years or 2.5 years now. The music died in a lot of ways. They closed the clubs, the restaurants, the concerts were canceled, right? So, the musicians took a very, very big hit, in the whole industry. And now it's just starting to come back. So I want to open up with a couple of musicians here to tell us, what do you think about conjunto music and what is the state right now? I know that, for instance, and I'm going to just throw this out there from the beginning, como al camarada Luis aquí, Díaz-Santana Garza, that la música de conjunto norteño, in a lot of ways, they've been much more successful than la música del conjunto tejano in terms of how much these bands make. They have huge followings, huge concerts, that I think that probably la música de conjunto tejano has never even reached. I mean, talk about Los Tigres del Norte o, ¿cómo se llama? El grupo de Laredo también. Intocable, yeah, you're right, Intocable. I was going to say Inolvidable, pero es Intocable. Huge bands, huge concerts, make big-time money. I remember one time, years ago, when I asked Intocable if they could play the festival, they said they wanted $80,000. I said, my whole budget is just $30,000 for 30 bands, so ahí está la diferencia, no? And plus, they have a whole media system, television, recording industry, radio industry, and now social media that's developed that really supports them, that I don't think that la música del conjunto tejano has. So we're going to be talking about that. So I want to start actually with Linda Escobar. Linda has been performing probably for over, what, 50, 60 years, Linda? You remember her when she had the big hit Frijolitos Pintos when she was, I think, only 8 years old. But she's been performing for a long time, a vocalist, award-winning musician, and now for many years, I think, she's been, I'm not sure how many years you've done the Veteranos Conjunto Festival, Linda?
21.
21 years she's done the Veteranos Conjunto Festival, that they end up raising scholarship money for young conjunto artists. So Linda, tell us a little bit about you, about your music, about the industry, and how you see the state of Conjunto Tejano right now, and what you think briefly what the future might be.
Okay, well, I feel that we have a lot of work to do to keep it growing. I am very grateful to the school districts that have incorporated conjunto music as a class to offer to our youth so that they can not only learn the story and the culture, but also to take pride and to keep the authenticity of our music alive and teach it to their children and grandchildren. So I feel that in incorporating the class of conjunto music into high schools in many more cities, we can keep conjunto music going, and with organizations such as the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center, the Texas Folklife, South Texas Conjunto Association, como una servidora también el Veterano Conjunto Festival, so we can continue to encourage these children to in their music development and careers, and just give them awards and help them, like little Joe said earlier, many times we didn't have or don't have the support or encouragement of the parents, but us as a community, as Hispanics, we owe it to our race to encourage the youth in conjunto music. And the reason that I took it under my wing to do this is because if it had not been for my father, the great Eligio Escobar, que en paz descanse, I would have never had the chance to be in conjunto music, as a recording artist for 58 years. It was because of my father, who helped me and taught me, and he was my mentor. That's why I am who I am today, and we need to do that to the rest of the children in conjunto music.
Thank you, Linda Escobar. I want to move over to Max Baca now, also another Grammy Award-winning musician, bajista, played with Flaco and a lot of the greats, has his own band, the Tex Maniacs. Max, I specifically want you to talk a little bit about the music and how you see conjunto music, el conjunto tejano, going, because Max, not only can he play the traditional music, right, con nomás acordeón y bajo, but the Tex Maniacs have kind of pushed the limits, I think, on a lot of levels and done some more progressive stuff, included, rock and roll, country, some blues and jazz into their music. So how do you see the music right now, in particular, and the musicians and the conjunto bands, Max? And then where do you think the music itself is going from the musician's standpoint and the music?
Yes, I think, like Linda said, there's a lot of great conjunto artists, new coming artists, but I think it's important that the communities get together and the people in general to go out to support the shows and so forth, and wherever there's a conjunto band playing, support them, go out and so forth. And thanks to the radio stations that we have that are still playing conjunto music faithfully, that's important. There's so many good conjunto artists out there. These young guys that are coming up that are just fantastic. So it's there. It's there. The music's there. Preserving our culture is there. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of the pioneers, that have started, that have paved the way, that have started conjunto, but a lot of these new bands are following the tradition, which is cool, and this is good. And For myself, I've been playing music conjunto faithfully for 45 years. You know, I started at a young age. I started when I was like 5 years old with my father's conjunto. And later on, you know, been blessed, very blessed to have come across, you know, Flaco Jimenez and actually play as his bajo sexto player for a lot of years, the Texas Tornadoes and so forth. But what I try to do is get involved into like organizations such as the Guadalupe Culture. I've been playing the Conjunto Festival for the past, you know, Juan was the first one to book my band, Los Hermanos Baca, back in 1990. And ever since then, I've been playing the Conjunto Festival faithfully. And other organizations such as the Folk Alliance, Texas Folk Life, because conjunto music is a form of folk music. And it started, you know, with accordion and the bajo sexto, you know, and so it is a form of folk music. And the folk category is a big category, if you know, and so I've been blessed to get involved with the Smithsonian, and we record under the Smithsonian Folkways recording label, and we have a few albums out or whatever, and recordings, and that has helped us to spread the conjunto sound, you know, and every show that we do, yeah, we do a little bit of craziness or whatever, blues, rock, whatever, just a little bit, you know, to catch the attention of the general population, of the general public. But yet we always have our conjunto, our roots. We always stick to what we started with and who we are, because you can't be somebody you're not. You know, you have to be who you are. So we are conjunto, you know, bajo sexto, acordeón, y bajo sexto digo. So, you know, so by maybe, you know, reaching out into a bigger audience, you know, playing these big folk festivals, our conjunto music at folk festivals around the world. We've been very blessed to take our music to China, to Russia, to Canada, to you know, Argentina, to you know, Germany, Switzerland, you know, Iraq, you know, during the war and so forth. We've been blessed to you know, with the State Department, with the Smithsonian, do tours, you know, to promote to cultural music. You know, we've been involved in big country music festivals around the world, and not necessarily like country music. It's music from different countries. That's what they call it. So we've been honored to participate in those type of festivals, representing Texas, representing America, United States of America, in our music. So that's what I'm trying to do, and so that the younger generation can keep it going. The conjuntos, the younger conjuntos can keep it going, and so forth. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mix. I want to go now to, we've had a couple of musicians. I want to go to part of the industry people before we get to the scholars, to the industry people, because, you know, without the radio stations, the recording industry, even the dance promotions industry, you know, you need all of these aspects of the industry and of our music to support the musicians, to keep it alive, to sustain it. So radio and television and you know, now social media and the internet is so important for the preservation and promotion of our music. Actually, I want to go ahead and go to Mr. Jerry Benavides, who's the owner of KEDA Radio here in San Antonio and other radio stations throughout the state, and tell you that from your perspective, Jerry, as being a radio man for many years now, and we've seen Conjunto and Tejano radio stations come and go. You know, I remember back in the early 90s when Conjunto music was sort of at its heyday, Tejano music, the major recording labels came in, that we used to have like almost 9 Tejano radio stations here in San Antonio alone, right? Conjunto and Tejano, bilingual, all in Spanish. And now I think maybe there's a couple of them, you know, that play KEDA Radio and Tejano 107 FM. All these other changed formats. So from your perspective, Jerry, how do you see conjunto music and sort of the radio industry, is the industry has really gone down, or do you see something else happening? Do you see a resurgence in different levels? Do you think social media is helping to keep it alive? Do you see more conjunto and Tejano radio stations coming back, or are they gone for good? And how do you feel about conjunto music and radio, Jerry?
Well, Juan, my experience on the conjunto music has always been my life. I was 5 years old. My dad already had a dance hall in Corpus. And Linda Escobar is a product from there. Yes. And him and my brother Rick will go to Victoria, or everywhere together, se caravanas juntos with your dad. And to now, my heart's always been in the conjunto music, before Tejano. Now that Tejano came along for me in the later days in the 80s and stuff, I think that we have a wave of new people coming in with accordions. San Antonio was really, when I came in back in 2011, there was hardly any new brand new conjuntos. We had more in Corpus, which is Manda La Venganza, David Flores, Jerry Flores. All those guys up there were playing, they were back in the day in their 20s or 18s. Am I right, Linda? About right? Yeah. Yeah. And when I came down here, all of a sudden we had Santiago Jimenez, we had Conjunto Cats, we have Romo, Lázaro Pérez and stuff like that. I think it's a wave. We kind of give them the reason to go and be a conjunto band, a radio station like me. I remember that Linda was the one that told me. Tony La Rosa said, what did Tony La Rosa? Thank God for K-Rock. Nobody was playing Tony La Rosa back in 2000s, early 2000s. So when I came in, I started playing a lot of Tony. And it started. I think the people les da más ánimo when you hear it over the air for free. I'm not cutting anybody in social media. If you have social media, you have to pay for it. Either you pay for your phone, you pay for broadband, you have to pay some way so you can listen to it. And the radio, all you do is just turn it on and click it and you're on, So my vision is a wave. The more we give the people, the young people to listen and like it. I got Belinda, my wife here, her grandson, he's a year and a half old. And one day I was there at the condo in Corpus. I turned on YouTube and put KEDA videos out of the festival here or KEDA festival. And there's a lot of people dancing. And he looked at it and he said, "You want to dance?" And so he went dancing. That was the biggest mistake I did. He never wants to stop dancing no more. He loves the music. As soon as he hears a conjunto music, he starts picking his hand up. So I think it's all about education. Teaching parents, teaching the kids to love conjunto music. Now on the other side of the industry is, I feel they should educate the conjunto people to make sure when they go record, to record it right. Digitize it, whatever they have to do. I'm not a recording studio guy, I'm not. But I know that we're going to spend the time and effort to record something. Record it right so you can get recognized. If that doesn't get recognized, I think Max can vouch for this. If it doesn't get recognized in Billboard, Mountain Latino, or it'd be, what's the other one, DBS or whatever it is, you're spinning your wheels. I tell a lot of these conjunto people, please record it right, bring it to me, and I can play it for you. I got thousands and thousands of people that listen to me. My people are the older group. They don't come out and tell me, I'm listening to you, because they don't. Ellos están más calladitos. Ellos no dicen nada. They're not going to go and do your diaries. They're not going to call you for a request of song, but they're listening to you. 57 years is going to be next year of KEDA. And I started in 2003 with K-Rock, and then about 4 or 5 years ago, I started in Dallas. So, I love conjunto music. I try to figure out how to support it. I know it's hard to make dances every week for conjunto music. It's, you can't have Los Fantasmas, you can't have Ricky Naranjo, we can't have Max every week to fill up the place. It's hard. So you have to be creative and do something different. But I feel if the Conjunto people, the new guys are coming on, Guadalupe Culture Center is doing the great studies for the accordion bajo sexto, Conjunto Tejeda as well. The schools, you know, ahora en todo el valle, I don't know about Corpus. Is it Corpus school? Corpus school? Not yet. Yeah, and aquí en San Antonio sí hay también. I think that's the route to go, but I hope they teach them también to record correctly and to justify correctly, so we can see another step for the Conjunto. Yeah, that's my future for it. And if I can support more, I had just bought a station in the middle of Odessa, and I had bought it because I'm an investor. I buy and sell, and I was not going to do anything with it, but I couldn't find anything, so I put a Tejano format on it, Tejano 105.9 FM, and I'll hold them below. Bert and Teresa from La Caliente 123, they're going to come in with a management agreement, and they're going to take over and keep it Tejano. And I got a little spike of Conjunto in there. So in other words, out of the whole hour, I got about two songs of Conjunto every hour in Midland, Odessa. And they love it. You know, something different. They say, that's San Antonio music. So, you know, 18 years of no station in Midland, Odessa. So, you know, that's a market I'm looking for. You know, I go back and put the hand, and then I find somebody to run it, because it's very hard for you to run it out of San Antonio. You don't know what's going on in Midland, Odessa, you know? So I do something different and try to continue La Onda Tejana, ¿me entiendes? En conjunto. And that's what's going on with me, Juan. You know, I try to preach it, como quien dice, and try to learn as well, because you learn something every day, ¿me entiendes? It changes, todo cambia, ¿me entiendes? Ahora con the platforms and all that. I'm not familiar with all that, but I me dijo Hector Barrón de los Fantasmas. Me said, what should I do, Jerry? Mira, búscale acá. He found Chris. I think Chris Rosales, I think his name is over there. He found Chris. Chris is helping him to put it up on the platforms and do all the stuff he wanted to do. You know, his music sells, but nobody puts it in the platform, ¿me entiendes? Or something. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, Hector's a great, he's been in the industry for how long? Hector Barrón Fantasmas. Over 60 years, you know, and the man doesn't know what I'm trying to say. That's why we need to educate our new ones, you know, for the radio stations to be more successful, you know, and so more we can help them push La Onda. ¿Entiendes? That's what I'm here for. ¿Entiendes? And at the same time, I make a little nickels on the sales and advertising and stuff like that. ¿Entiendes? So, you know, it's got to pay the bills, you know. I'm not, hey, internet radio is real good, but the real radio, it costs some money, ¿me entiendes? And if it breaks down, boom, forget about it. You know?
Thank you. Thank you for your work, Jerry. Jerry Benavides. I'm going to continue with the media people here a little bit, and I want to move over to Rudy Treviño, who's been a television news anchor for 44 years, currently anchors the 6 and 10 p.m. newscast for the ABC TV affiliate in Corpus Christi, and for 22 years, he's been the host of Domingo Live and is the president and executive producer of the nationally syndicated radio show Tejano Gold Countdown. All right, so Rudy, what do you have to tell us from your perspective, and following up to what Jerry just said about the state of conjunto music, in particular, acordeón y bajo sexto, even though we know that conjunto music is the original Tejano music. It is Tejano music también, no? Some people say, pues es conjunto, es Tejano. No, conjunto is the original Tejano music. It's porque nosotros los mexicanos en Texas lo creamos, right? It's Tejano music. So from your perspective and in the media, how do you see the state of conjunto right now? Where do you think it's going?
From my perspective, as a messenger, as a journalist, and the fact that I do this show, Tejano Gold Countdown, it's because I love it. Because it's in my blood, it's in my DNA. In 1964, cuando comenzó el programa de Domingo Live, which was hosted by a guy named Domingo Peña, that's when I got to meet this lady here. And it's like, my heart was like, oh my God, well, how old was I? I was, 12, 10 years old. Thing is that Tejano music was in me because my mom and my dad had a little recording studio in the back. Y traían sus compadres con el bajo sexto, con el acordeón, la tambora, el bass. And I would hear my mom and my aunt sing. I was a little kid, and my dad had a little tape recorder that would record them. I still have those tapes today. And whenever I'm feeling like, man, this ain't going nowhere, I feel like I'm having to sell my radio show to get advertisers. As Jerry said, we need to make money, and our artists need to make money. Our radio stations need to make money to stay on the air, to promote our music. But when I feel like, my God, I'm tired of dealing with these agencies who say, your market, if you were regional Mexican, oh my goodness, we would play your music. Why don't you say regional Mexican? Why don't you reach out to the regional Mexican music artists? Well, that's all fine and good, but they're not us. That's not who we are. So when I get discouraged from talking to these ad agencies that we're hoping to harvest some of those dollars that are going to, which is the big? iHeartRadio, that do the Latino, stereo Latino, that are, that are Univision, that are playing la música regional, that we embrace. And being Tejanos, we embrace all of that. We embrace it. But we also have our talented artists, Max, Linda, all these other talented artists, if you just open the door and allowed us in. So ideas, Juan, when I'm feeling down, I'm going, okay, gosh, how am I going to sell this? I listen to my mom and my aunt sing. And they're the inspiration. You listen to your parents' consejos, and it comes back to you, and you go, you know what? I'm not giving up. So we cannot give up where we are today. Yes, we are a viable industry. We have some viable, talented musicians and artists that are so good. But unless they record their product in a professional way, like Jerry was saying, unless you spend the money invested in your product, nobody's going to listen to it. And that's the sad part, because we have such talent out there that hasn't even been discovered yet. You know, I talk to Abraham Quintanilla all the time. Talks about Selena, how he would take her and the kids and they'd go out and get in the bus. Back then they didn't have the bus. They had a van where they'd go and play. How did you do it? How did you do it? Well, you know, I'd watch out for my kids. I wanted to make sure they were doing the right thing. Make sure that they were working hard. Make sure they were practicing, that they were good. They got good at what they did. It's like, okay, we don't all have that parent behind us saying, Orale, you can do it. Come on, you can do this. Make it happen. So how do we go about encouraging those little kids that apenas levantan acordeón, that just came out of getting a scholarship from El Veterano? How do we encourage them to say, look, you got to do it right? I tell you one thing, the Valley, the Rio Grande Valley, they have it. They have implemented and included the accordion with their high school bands. So when you go to a high school football game, you're going to see a couple of kids playing accordions with the band. How many other school districts north of the Rio Grande Valley are doing that? I don't know one. I know we don't have it in Corpus. Porque hay veces que nos agringamos, okay, and we forget where we came from. And our kids, and I got to say, I'm guilty of it. My daughter speaks only English. And that, to me, it's like, shame on me. How is that possible? I do Domingo Live in Spanish and bilingual. I promote our music, our culture. I do this because I love it. And my daughter says, Dad, I'm sorry, I don't understand it. But I tell you what, play music from Linda or from Max or from Flaco, and she's the first one to stand up and dance. So what does that tell you? It's in our culture, but more importantly, it's in our DNA. And if we pass that along, if we somehow find a way to market that to them, hey, wake up that DNA. Wake up your Chicano, your Tejano, your Conjunto DNA, because it's in you. It's in you. And you've got to do it one way or another. You know, and I can't say that por la buena, por la mala, like my grandmother used to say, but it's there if you just teach them and give them the time. So where do I see it going? One, forward. Tejano's never going to die. Tejano and Conjunto will never die. As long as there's quinceañeras and bodas and festivales in the back of our houses, we're going to have it. The idea is that we want to recognize those artists, those budding little kids that may have an incredible talent that he can share with the rest of the world. I think that through us doing our parts, by you doing what you've done for the last how many years? 40 plus? I mean, it's a blessing that we are able to do this and discuss here entre nosotros what we need to do. and that is inspire the future to do it. That's why when she comes on Domingo Live, I call her royalty. Domingo Live is the only programa, and if I can just take a little minute. Domingo Live is el único un programa that airs on a O&O radio TV station, on an ABC television station. Like here in San Antonio, KSAT, they would never take an hour and a half on a Sunday morning to air something that's totally Chicano, raza for us. That's what Domingo Live is. It's an hour and a half of whatever we want to promote that is ours, that is nosotros. And it started in 1964 con el señor ese Domingo Peña, who back then had 3 hours. And the way he got that show is because the owner of the station, a non-Hispanic, okay, a white person, got the license based on the fact that he would allow Hispanics, give them some time to reflect in the community. So he said, okay, well, I'm not going to give them prime time, ¿verdad? Why? Because I got to make money. So what he thought he would do is he'd give them some time when nobody watches, you know, something reasonable during the day. How about Sunday mornings? Was they're either in church or they're sleeping in from being hungover. So he gave them 3 hours on Sunday mornings. Bam, Channel 3, where I work, is #1 and has been #1 since 1964. Okay? Why? Because nuestra raza is loyal to a fault. So they watch the news, and guess what? Now they're watching Domingo Live too, and they continue to watch it. And that's when we give our opportunities. Linda, like I said, is royalty. But we want our young artists to come in. We want to bring in the young kids. Why? To grow nuestra cultura, to wake up that DNA. I've said it. Thank you, Juan.
Thank you, Rudy. Thank you for all your years of work también. And did they make money for the station? So it's not just, you know, to give us a little program here or a block of time, but they're making money for the station and the ratings and everything too. So it just goes to show that raza programming in nuestra música can be successful and has been successful over the years on different levels, even though many radio stations and other things have changed formats and gone under. I want to switch now to this side of the room, this side, this table over here, and I want to ask our camarada aquí de Monterrey, Luis Díaz, Luis Díaz-Santana Garza. He has too many last names. Así, yes. Luis Díaz-Santana Garza, que nos platica un poquito. Yo creo que si quieres puedes hablar en español también, Luis, o en inglés. Yo sé que eres bilingüe también.
Sí. Thank you.
Sobre la música de Conjunto Norteño un poquito y la relación entre la música de Conjunto Norteño y el Conjunto Tejano, porque yo sé que su último libro se trata de eso, ¿verdad? Principalmente.
Sí, muchas gracias. Antes de comenzar, bueno, quisiera decir que mi nombre completo es Luis Adrián. Todavía tengo tengo un segundo nombre y
escribirlo aquí, no lo
un apellido larguísimo, ¿verdad? Gracias a mis padres, que Dios los bendiga. Y antes de responder a la pregunta que está haciendo el carnal Juan, quiero agradecerle de todo corazón a él por invitarme, a Dan, a Cristina por esta invitación. Es un honor estar aquí con tan grandes músicos. Hasta se me quiebra la voz, ¿verdad?, cuando hablo con tan grandes músicos, promotores culturales y personas que admiro de la academia, ¿verdad?, como el mismo Dan y también nuestro amigo de California. Y antes de comenzar, quería agradecer también al Centro Cultural Guadalupe por esta invitación para estar aquí. Es un honor, pues, ser el único extranjero aquí en San Antonio y platicar sobre esta joya que es la música del conjunto. Y para responder a la pregunta, yo quiero platicarles que apenas ayer llegué a esta hermosa y gran ciudad y cuando salí del aeropuerto tomé un taxi y resulta que el taxista era un señor de Marruecos, from Morocco. Y él me decía, mientras platicábamos y me llevaba al hotel, me decía, ¿y usted a qué viene a hacer aquí? En inglés, ¿verdad? Él solamente hablaba inglés. Y yo le contestaba, bueno, pues fui invitado para estar en este simposio esta noche. Y me decía él, conjunto tejano, me decía el marroquí. Conjunto Heritage Music, he said. Heritage Music, I thought, es fantástico, ¿no? Porque esta música, me decía él, es la música que me gusta escuchar con mi familia. Cuando estamos en familia, oímos Heritage Music. Y dice, de mi país, pero también de este país adoptivo, que es Estados Unidos, que tenía más de 10 años viviendo aquí. Y entonces yo pensé, qué hermosa forma de expresar la importancia de la música tejana, porque la llevamos en el corazón, ¿verdad? Todos los que la conocemos. Entonces yo pensé, bueno, también es authentic roots music, American roots music, es también una música auténtica. Y para contestar la pregunta, pues aquí vemos que incluso los extranjeros que no tienen ninguna relación con los latinos, ¿verdad? Con los mexicanos o con los mexicoamericanos o con los chicanos, como quieran ustedes llamar, incluso las personas extranjeras reconocen el valor cultural que tiene la música del conjunto. Y al mismo tiempo yo pensé, cuando me decía eso, me acordé de un ejecutivo de una compañía grabadora de recording industry, un ejecutivo de Corpus Christi, con quien platiqué precisamente cuando hacía mi libro, y él me decía, el mayor número de descargas, de downloads de nuestra página web, de piezas, de songs, procede de Japón, de Alemania, de países europeos que uno no se espera, ¿verdad? De encontrar, ¿verdad? Y entonces, bueno, pues vemos en este panorama tan fascinante que la música del conjunto, pues es una música viva, no es como le decían al carnal Juan hace 40 años, que es una música obsoleta para los viejos y que ya los jóvenes no quieren tocar. En la mañana, y aquí viene, creo que llegando, no veo bien con las luces, pero creo que viene llegando nuestro querido amigo don Santiago Jiménez, viene llegando, maestro. En la mañana, soy su mijo, ya me dice mi hijo. En la mañana, es un honor, don Santiago. En la mañana que fuimos Dan y yo a platicar con él por varias horas y que nos hizo el honor de tocar el acordeón para nosotros, pues yo veo a un hombre que toma el acordeón y tiene 78 años, pero tiene una enorme vitalidad. Yo le digo, bueno, yo tengo apenas 51 años y yo no puedo seguir el paso que usted va, ¿verdad? En lo que yo tomé una cerveza, él tomó 6. Disculpe que lo esté ventaneando, maestro. Pero yo lo comento porque me da un enorme gusto ver que nos quedan varios de nuestros grandes músicos tejanos y que están con una gran vitalidad, con una gran energía, nos quedan para rato. Pero hablando del futuro, yo creo que lo que mencionaba Linda, a quien saludo con gran cariño, no la había saludado, como mencionaba Linda, es fantástico que ya en las escuelas en el Valle, por ejemplo, la materia, ¿verdad?, del conjunto tejano ya es como obligatoria en las escuelas. Entonces ahí vemos que va a haber un gran semillero, va a ser un espacio donde se van a surgir importantes músicos seguramente, porque una vez que un niño toma un acordeón o un bajo sexto o un bajo eléctrico o las percusiones, la batería, una vez que lo toma y comienza a tocar, se quedan maravillados los niños. Es increíble cómo los jóvenes se acercan a la música con ese gran entusiasmo, ¿verdad? Que no los abandonará toda su vida. Yo comencé a tocar, yo soy guitarrista y comencé a tocar como a los 8 años, ¿verdad? Y ya tengo 51. Entonces, yo creo que estos programas como el que hay en el Valle y aquí mismo en el Guadalupe, yo sé que tienen también clases con grandes músicos, ¿verdad? Que dan a las nuevas generaciones las primeras lecciones. Entonces yo creo que con esta promoción que se hace de la música tejana en todos esos espacios y además en muchos lugares de Texas, no nada más en estos que mencioné, ¿verdad? Hay muchos otros, Alice, ¿verdad? Está también, hay muchos lugares importantes del conjunto. Yo creo que va a haber, como mencionaban hace poco, conjunto para rato. Otros 100 años va a durar la música de acordeón y bajo sexto. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Luis. Y ahorita, despuesito, vamos a hablar un poquito más sobre la música de conjunto norteño y cómo la miras y la relación. Y también si existen clases aquí como en los Estados Unidos en las escuelas de conjunto norteño allá también y en comunidades también. So, hablamos un poquito más. We're gonna go over now. I'm saving the académicos for the end, but I want to move now to Cristina Ballí, and y'all all know Cristina Ballí, who's the executive director of the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center and has been involved with conjunto music also for many years. She ran a conjunto festival down with the Narciso Martinez Cultural Arts Center in El Valle, and also conjunto programs and apprenticeships, and the big squeeze from Texas Folklife Resources in Austin before she came to the Guadalupe hace como 6 años, and been doing the Tejano Conjunto Festival here for these last 6 years. So, Cristina, your thoughts on the state and future of conjunto music from your perspective?
Yes, I was thinking about it just right now as I'm sitting here. I've been working in conjunto music cultural programming for 18 years already. I started in 2004 at the Narciso Martinez Cultural Arts Center down in San Benito. And in those 18 years, I have seen nothing but strong response to conjunto music programs, to public programs. I see programs that are well attended, and then within that, like Juan said, I ran a program called The Big Squeeze, which is an accordion contest for young people at an organization called Texas Folklife, and I ran that for almost 8 years. And one day, I remember I said, let me count how many young people have been through this program in this time, and it was over 200 young people, in 8 years. And not all of them, the finalists, of course, and there's only one finalist every year, so those were eight winners, right? And then the champions, it was 8 champions, and finalists, there were dozens of finalists, and then I said, let me count, just the participants, everybody who entered, and it was over 200. So that means there's hundreds of young people out there in the state of Texas, playing conjunto tejano norteño music on the accordion. And that was just the accordion, okay? That was not the bajo sexto, that was not bass, that was not drums. So if we multiply, 200 times 4, ponle que 4, in a conjunto, okay, all right, we're at 800. So, and that's just the ones that participated. I know there's lots that did not participate. So we're talking about thousands of young people in the state of Texas playing conjunto music. That's not bad. The music is not dying. The music, that is very healthy, and it continues. Cada año, there are more participants. That program is still going. The Big Squeeze is still going strong. So, when we talk about that with the youth, that's going, that's not ending. The other thing that I want to point out, now with the adults, now all these young people that were playing the accordion, playing the music, they're not all going to be professional musicians. They're not all going to continue to perform. But they all will continue to listen to the music, because this music is so important to them that at some point they picked up the accordion. So they are going to have, weddings and quinceañeras and parties where they're going to want conjunto music. They're going to have backyard barbecues where they're going to listen to the music. So the music will continue. The other thing that I want to point out is the evidence, kind of that I see of the participation in this music. The Tejano Conjunto Festival. My first year here was in 2017. Now, I've been coming as a fan of the Conjunto Festival back since the 90s. Con mi hermana Cecilia, who did she wrote her honors thesis on the Conjunto Festival back in the 90s. And we used to come, and at the time I was a social worker. I was not doing arts administration, artistic programming at all. I had no idea what that was. I never imagined I would end up doing this. So we used to come, and with the Conjunto Festival now, in 2017, and then, of course, I came, and I have all this background in conjunto music, right? This is my specialty, so of course I'm going to work it, and put a lot of effort into the Conjunto Festival. And we really doubled down with our partnerships, our promotional partnerships, and our cultural workers on the ground. People que le debo mucho. I owe a lot to Vic Gonzalez, who's back over there, and he's been a wonderful promotional partner, and Vic knows even way more because he's out there all over the state, seeing all the conjunto dances all over the state. And then some of our other friends, like Rudy Lopez with Lopez Entertainment, here in town, Bossman's, and then all our friends here, a lot of our friends here that we partner with, and Queda, of course, Queda has been a wonderful partner. Nos ha ayudado mucho Nelda and Jerry. So connecting, with the people on the ground. But here's the thing about the music, that you have to know where to go look, right? We're not going to find it in the mainstream media so much, with just some examples that are still holding on, and hanging on and doing it there, like Rudy Treviño. And so you have to know where to look. You have to know where to go plug in. You have to be on the ground. It's very strong, but it still requires knowing the community. You have to know the community. So, just connecting, doing these partnerships. What do we do in 2018? The attendance at the Conjunto Festival just, it just exploded. And then again, of course, in 2019, we were getting a little worried at Rosedale Park. It was too many people. We were starting to think, oh my God, are we outgrowing Rosedale Park? And so the response of the fans is huge. And they're coming out. So, conjunto music is very strong. It is a strong folk music. It is a community music. It's vernacular music. It's perhaps not it is not a commercial music. It is not a commercial music. And yes, norteño, some of the norteño strands of music is commercial music. And we all know what happens to commercial music too. Okay? Without the industry feeding it, it can fall apart. Kind of like what happened with Tejano music in the 90s. After the industry stopped feeding it, with contracts and things like that, and promotions on radio stations, it lost steam. But conjunto music has never lost steam. It is on the ground. It is not, commercial success, but it continues to be very strong in communities. And I just see evidence of that. And in 18 years, I haven't stopped seeing evidence of conjunto music being muy arraigado en la comunidad, arraigado. It's there. So that's what I see, and I think that's what will continue to happen for, I think, decades to come.
Gracias, Cristina, and thank you for all your work also. Now we're going to move to the académicos, because they have an interesting way of putting these things together from different, different perspectives. And I want to move to probably one of our our newest Conjunto scholars here right next to Cristina, who wrote his doctoral dissertation focusing on dancing, ¿verdad, Alejandro? And the spaces where Conjunto music is performed, right? And enacted. So this is Alejandro Wolbert Pérez.
Gracias. Thank you. Thank you all for inviting me here. It's a great honor. I used to live in San Antonio. I wrote for the San Antonio Current. I attended the Conjunto Fest since '97 when I moved out here. And so to be on this stage and to share it with all of you is also just an incredible honor. I'm thinking about this question of the present, the future, the past of the Conjunto Fest. I want you to look around and look who's here and acknowledge who's here, because we have generations of collective knowledge, of collective wisdom. And one of the things that part of my take on Conjunto music is that it is our knowledge, it is our experience through music, through song, through the dance. So not just the performers on the stage and what they bring and the stories they're telling, but the dances, the way we interact, those community spaces where we gather, we come together. And where is this taking place? This is taking place in Texas during the 20th century, during segregation, during the racism, during the violent oppression that we've experienced. Or in the case of my family, leaving Texas, going to the Midwest, following those migrant trails, following those trails into the factories, into other places, but bringing that music with us. So in terms of that presence, we have that knowledge, that wisdom, and it spans generations. And so acknowledging that, I think, is where I want to begin. I did write some things down so I don't go off track. As a scholar, thinking about Conjunto music, I spend a lot of time thinking about music and the mechanics. And something from last year's Conjunto Fest, and Nicolas Valdez, if he's here, I want to just give a shout out to him and Linda as well. Your performance with Boney, you know, he had these moments, little Joe talking, you know, yo no llores, these moments, the emotion, the spaces, how the music provides the space for those expressions of feeling, for those expressions of emotion and bringing people together, and how that's so valuable. So I want to acknowledge that as we're thinking about the work, really, that the music is doing. Not thinking about it as a commodity, not thinking about something that we're selling for profit, thinking about it in other ways of being. Because it's not just profit, capitalism, commercial, work yourself to death. I mean, that's the message we receive. The music gives us pleasure, and in that space of pleasure, we have belonging, we have community, we can come together. The other thing that I want to think about, the second thing, I have a list here, I'll try and keep short, is that history of the music. And by history, I don't just mean the past, the present, the future, but the way that the music, the way that Conjunto music keeps things alive. The songs, the dance, that go back to those generations. And when we think about how we learn how to play, and when we think about the traditions that we pass on, and when we think about the ways that we're introduced to the music, how many of you have those stories of hearing it, in my case, at my grandmother's house, listening to it? I associate it with my grandmother, I associate it with those experiences, with those knowledge bases. I'm passing this on to my children as well, and we hear that a lot. Let's value that. Let's center that as that form of continuity. Bringing it into the schools, teaching it, having the talleres, the Conjunto taller, the lessons at the Guadalupe Center, but also recognizing those spaces where we're doing this. We're doing this work of teaching and sharing and building community. It's a multi-generational space. It's a space that celebrates body positivity. I want us to think about that in terms of how we all come together in so many different ways. It's a space that's open to feelings, that's open to sharing, that's open to building community, and it's a very welcoming space. It's not, it's not a nightclub where you have to stand in line and a bouncer's kicking out the people who they don't think are cool. No, it's very welcoming. We're dancing in a circle. Come on, there's no one at the top, no one at the back. We're not pushing each other out of the way. It's community driven, it's community based, and it's embodied in our practices itself. So when I think about Conjunto and I think about those practices, about the evidence, about what we have in the present, and I also think, let's go on to the next page here. So thinking about the present, I want to also think about the future. I want to think about some of my hopes, really, more than projections, more than saying I'm going to look into a crystal ball and this is what I see is going to happen. Well, here's some of my hopes. I want to see more support for women, for more women performers, for Conjunto to recognize non-binary folks, to recognize people across the spectrum, really, as participants. They're in the scene too. Let's recognize them. Let's bring them on board. Let's support them to find that place, because Conjunto is so welcoming. And we've seen this. We see this in places. We see the work. We know it's there. Let's celebrate it. Let's bring that in. Let's bring more people into the community here. I want to think about how, and little Joe talked about, I wrote these notes down before I heard his speech, but he reminded me, I want us to think about as well, in terms of our history, in terms of recognizing where we're at, our relationship with the African American community, our relationship with Black cultural forms of expression, our relationship that influence, even if we don't have a presence, even if we don't necessarily see it, to use it, to think of it that way, but how much of our experience is shared, and how much of our musicians, how much do we learn from one another? Let's open up those spaces. Let's recognize those influences. Let's talk about how they've influenced our style of dance, our style of dress. Anyone that dresses Pachuco style, you know, we have that influence there. We can talk about musicians and how they're all hanging out together anyway. So let's acknowledge that, and let's bring that into the fray. And then let's see, where am I? The last thing, to just kind of wrap this up, I want us to think about Conjunto as place-based knowledge practices, because it is something that does come from the borderlands. It is something that does come from this area, from our people, from our ancestors, from here. And so we have a relationship to the land, to the place, and even the name itself, Tejano Conjunto, Texas Mexican music. I live in California now. It's a different scene out there. People do dance differently. I mean, I'm very curious in terms of what you've seen in terms of norteño dancing, because we have these dance practices that are very unique, very regionally situated. It comes from where we are, and it's reflected in our music. And so thinking about the next generations, looking ahead, I'm reminded, I look back, I think about where we've been, and that helps me think about where we're going in terms of our music. These are some of the things that I hope that as I look back into the music, as I look back into the history of our music, I hope and I expect and I imagine that we'll still see these things. I'm excited about this conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing some more. Thank you.
Gracias, Alejandro. I want to go down to another academico here, Dan Margolies, who actually you teach in Virginia, right, Dan, and has written about conjunto music. And how do we sustain conjunto music? Because it takes, you know, toda una comunidad, como dijo Alejandro, and Dan has said also, and that we have to develop the mechanisms to sustain our music in our communities, because if we don't support it, if we don't nurture it, if we don't teach it, you know, it could die out, you know. I don't think that'll happen personally, but we still have to, you know, develop those things that are going to be supporting and sustaining our music. So Dan Margolies here.
Okay, thanks. It's an honor to be here, up here with everybody, and as a total outsider to all this. And, you know, I got into conjunto music in the 90s when I heard old recordings from, put out on our Huli. You know, I don't know, 20-some years ago, I saw Chris Strakowicz at a festival, and I told him he changed his life because he put out this Juan Lopez collection. And, you know, I heard that, which was my first introduction to music, and I thought, man. You know, so I just kept listening, finally figured out you had to come to Texas to hear it played live, and so then I've been coming down to this festival, the Conjunto Festival, for 16 years, and just because, you know, I like to play music and I like to dance and I like to drink beer, which are all these conjunto things, but, you know, I'm also an academic, so I started to write about it, and, you know, in 2009, I wrote an article that was kind of building on these ideas at the time, which was applying ecological sustainability concepts to culture, and that comes from originally someone named Jeff Todd Titan was starting to apply this, and so I read it, and you know, I had met Juan at the festival, and I I wrote an article about the festival as this kind of model of how a vernacular, traditional, very regional, and very singular style of music could be sustained through a kind of infrastructural response like the festival. And that was written however many years ago, 13, 14 years ago, and actually, like I think I kind of understood what was happening, because it turns out, as Cristina and Luis were talking about, it's very much, the years have proven that to be the case. So Conjunto music, I'm approaching it not as being talked about as a commercial music, as a media system, and those are all very important. And I have the benefit, or not just as an outsider, but as an academic and a decidedly nonprofit person, so I'm more interested in just the cultures that develop around these things, what Alejandro was talking about in terms of families and communities and this community embeddedness. And in that way, Conjunto really is a model for these other, for the kind of musics that have disappeared almost everywhere else in the country. So, rather than thinking of it as, well, it's not as commercially viable, the way to think about it, I think, is that everywhere else in the country, people they don't dance with each other in traditional places where people have been dancing for generations, with multiple generations in place, like Alejandro was talking about. And they don't revere the forebears of the music. They can't all name them. In Conjunto, everybody knows them by their first name: Santiago, Valerio, Narciso, right? You just say that, and then that evokes this entire world. And that's not just for old people, not just for musicians, but for everybody coming up, and it's taught again, and it's done through these systems. And so, the festivals are important, the nonprofits are important, and really, if you know anything about agriculture, American agriculture now is like American culture. It's sterile and it's unsustainable. And so the way they prepare fields now is they kill everything with chemicals that cause cancer, and then they sterilize the field, and then they plant a monocrop, which is one genetically modified thing designed for maximum yield, usually with a decline in nutrition. And so it's the same kind of thing going culturally. And so cultures are complex, they're messy, they're sometimes difficult, they're impenetrable, but they are very alive, and they foster this very big diversity of life and of culture and of feeling and of emotion and all those things that we all value. And so I was thinking about this yesterday, actually, when we were setting up for the kind of kickoff for the 40th year. At the gallery, there's an exhibit from Conde Aguilar, who's an artist, very interesting artist and really good musician. And so they were setting up an exhibit of this very accomplished artist who's playing with Gilberto Perez Jr. So it's everything Conjunto is. It's art, music, and family, and all together. And outside, on the other side of the Guadalupe fence, and this is happening at the gallery here at this nonprofit, which has been a pillar of sustainable culture in the state, in San Antonio and throughout Texas. Over the fence, there were these 4 or 5 guys drinking beer, barbecuing meat, and playing music and listening to music. And they were there when I got here early in the afternoon, and they were there when we left. And they did not care what was going on at the Guadalupe. And to me, that was, in a snapshot, the whole thing, which is these guys just living it, not worried about what's happening, and then also, cultural workers sort of helping to sustain it. And that's why the culture is so alive, because there's so many different aspects to it. And I'll just say one more thing, which is the kind of thinking about how the media works in this. And what interests me is the kind of DIY part of the culture. And so the DIY, doing it yourself, that's a kind of ethos, and it really works for people who work in a nonprofit kind of culture worker sort of way. But it also works with just people, especially in Conjunto music, who come out of working class backgrounds. They have no real training. They don't even really know what they're doing, but they're moved to help preserve the music. And they do this by recording it, by filming it, by taking photographs of it, by putting on events, by learning to play the instruments themselves, by just getting together with their friends and playing music, by learning to build the instruments. And one of the things that interests me in Conjunto, like if there's very few bajo makers. There's probably 2 that really matter in Texas now, right? Macias and Salinas. And so they make bajos, and then what do? They also make the strings by hand, one at a time. And that is just like, they don't even think, well, I'm going to make a bajo, I'm going to have to make the strings also by hand. But that's a that's like a very Tejano attitude. It's really interesting. And to me, it's just kind of a microcosm of the whole approach, which is do it yourself, make it happen, do it right, do it within the community, and there, keep it alive. So, thanks.
Thank you, Dan. These people have their PhDs, right, that I'm introducing here, these last few people. And Dan is also the professor and chair of the history department at Virginia Wesleyan University. I want to end with our elder statesman here, a scholar that has written about conjunto music. I know you have at least one book out that's called Tejano and Proud, Guadalupe, San Miguel on the far end, and he's been at the University of Houston for many, many years, and writes primarily about, language and culture and music and education. So welcome, and interested in your thoughts, Professor.
Thank you very much. It's strange how people get to being part of this music that we all enjoy. And I am not a musician, I can't even sing, but I came through the process of dancing as a little boy in Corpus, going to all of these quinceañeras and dances, and then as in middle school and high school, going to all of these places, the Coliseum, the Exposition Hall, and then all of these nightclubs, and hearing all of these groups, Laura Canales, Los Chachos, and Little Joe. I learned how to dance, and then we had a group in Corpus that we developed fancy steps to the polkas and to the wapangos, and so we were always out there dancing. And as a dancer, I realized that when you go to, let's say here, conjunto music, it's a different kind of beat. And you have to dance a little bit different than if you go here in orquesta, like Little Joe or Sonny. And so I learned how to dance differently for the different groups. And then as I went to college, people would ask me about the Tejano dancing. And then I started giving lectures on and examples of Tejano dancing in Chicano culture classes. And so fairly soon, I decided that I might as well start writing about it, because people would ask me all these questions that I didn't know, but I was a historian, and it says I should know these questions. I can do research on these questions. So that's how I got involved, and I was fortunate enough that I was part of that generation during the Chicano movement that got access to higher education and then to graduate school. And we were part of that first generation that began to write books and do research on Chicano history and Chicano culture. And as Cecilia said earlier in a talk, we need more publications on our history, on our music. And we see the example, for instance, that individuals like Little Joe now get to write his story. It's his story, it's nobody's story, but it reflects our history. Max has written a book again, and it reflects a certain way in which he became involved in the music and how he has promoted the music and how he is engaging in that music. And so we need more of these voices about our history and our culture. And I've been fortunate that I have gotten support from the university, at the University of Houston and others that I was with, to actually do the research, to interview individuals that have been involved in different aspects of our history. I have a stack of books here, for instance. These are all books that I've written. And they deal with civil rights, they deal with politics, they deal with language and culture. And one of those deals with music, Tejano Proud. And this is a book that essentially talks about the origins of recorded music, the beginnings of conjunto and orquesta music, and the influences on that type of music and how it changed over time. And some ensembles, particular mixes of musical groups have come and gone. For example, you really don't have the orquestas now, very few orquestas. are around in today's world, but they were very popular in the 70s and 80s. We have the country groups that were very popular for a short period of time. And we really don't have that many country groups anymore. We have the grupos that emerged in the 60s. They were not around in the 40s and the 50s. Los Fabulosos Cuatro, Lara Canales, and others. And in the most recent period, what has happened is some of these groups have sort of collapsed, and some of them have been mixing up. And so you have what's called a blurring of genres. And so you have a group that plays all types. Jay Perez plays conjunto music, and Jay Perez also plays the orquesta style. So you have this vibrancy in the community that keeps changing and is being impacted by American music, it's impacted by Mexican music, it's impacted by Latin American music, and even Caribbean music. And the musicians, every generation, a new generation of young people get to mix whatever is popular in the United States and in Mexico, and they create new sounds for the new generation. And it's very exciting to see this, how it has developed over time. Now, in terms of getting, where are we now in terms of música tejana en conjunto? Well, I see several trends. One is that in one aspect, it has gone global. You really have more people listening to this music now than ever before. I mean, whether it be Intocable or Bobby Pulido or Jennifer Peña, they're playing in an international stage. That's why they cost $80,000 to come here, because they're playing in big arenas and making big money. The other trend is that it has gone local. A lot of times you really can't find this music. You find it in the local communities where it originated. So you have to be from a local barrio to know where the music is. And in this sense, then, you have a variety of individuals continuing the tradition. Now, in terms of its growth, I do see some growth, as some individuals expressed here. We see signs of growth. It has never gone away. It's always been here, but it's been institutionalized now. For instance, where you have schools begin to teach conjunto. They teach the accordion. Well, you didn't have that 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And as more schools and more pressure is applied on schools to teach this, to have young people utilize these instruments and learn about these instruments, I assume that this will grow over time, because we are growing over time. We also see important elements that were not around decades ago, like the big squeeze. These are playing instrumental roles in encouraging the young generation to come forward and to learn and to practice and then to become part of the musical groups that many of us enjoy and dance to. Similar to others, as I argue in the book, that música tejana and conjunto music is music by Tejanos for Tejanos. It will never die, because Tejanos will never die. It will evolve over time depending on what the young generation decides to incorporate into the music. And so if we nurture our community, make sure that the opportunities are there for our community to keep advancing and then to contribute back to the community, the future is really positive, in that what I see is a significant growth over time, and people will come back. Sonny Osuna, was playing English music, and he then switched over to Tejano and created a new genre of music. Selena was singing English. She didn't know Spanish. And then she started singing Tejano and música tejana. And so we have this young generation that, yes, the assimilation forces are strong, and many of our youth are not speaking English, but eventually many of them are coming back. I look at Emilio's kids now. They didn't want to sing any of his dad's songs. You know, they were singing rock and roll and others, and now they are starting to come back and appreciate the beauty of Emilio's music and what that represented to our community. So I only see that, yes, some individuals are going to grow up with English music, but eventually those will probably come back and become part of the innovators in our music. So the future seems bright if we ourselves support all of these efforts, support the Conjunto Festival, support the Big Squeeze. And as some of us are becoming more middle class, we are able to channel more, and we should provide increased funding for many of these activities. But I think that the future is bright for us, and regardless of what context we have, increased racism, discrimination, our community has survived by turning inward to self-support, to increase, to play the music that sort of enlivens the soul, and I think that that is going to continue. I am very happy to be part of this panel because I see some of the people, some of my idols, Cecilia and Max now, Linda, you know, and I see them still being active, and I see new people being actively involved, and I see more community people supporting these activities that will encourage more of that.
Gracias, maestro. Big round of applause for all of these panelists, you know. Some interesting perspectives. I'm gonna start off the questions of the panels, and then as we move here in a little bit, if you have some questions, please come up to the microphone here so we can hear you, or a comment. We already have one, but I'm gonna start it off. Listen, hold up. She was the first one to get in line here. But I want to start with the musicians, with Max and Linda again, come back to them, because Jerry and El Camarada here, Rudy, had talked about, you know, you got to have good recordings, you know, and that's true. And I remember that back in the late 80s and early 90s, right, that when I think that Tejano and Conjunto music in general was sort of at its heyday in a lot of ways, because a lot of the major labels came into Conjunto and Tejano music, no? CBS and, give me some, Max.
EMI.
Capital EMI, Warner Brothers, right? Because I think that they saw that within Tejano music, and if they looked at it not just in Texas, but throughout the Southwest, and then the Spanish language market throughout, you know, Mexico and Latino America, Pal Sur, right? A big Spanish language world market, that they could capitalize and make some money. So they came into the Tejano music and Conjunto music market and bought up and signed to contracts all of these, you know, major groups, including, you know, Mas and Pulido, and with them, you know, David Lee, with them the Conjuntos also rose, and they bought up various Conjunto musicians, and we had these huge clubs here in San Antonio and other places throughout that had, you know, 3,000, 4,000 people, you know, and they pack them many weekends. And like I said, 9 radio stations, you know, Tejano, bilingual, Spanish language radio stations here. Those kind of, you know, it reached a certain peak at that time. And then after that, the major labels pulled out, because obviously they didn't make enough money, I think, right? And they were investing, they weren't making it back. And then I think at that point, Conjunto and Tejano music started, you know, going down. And then with the death of Selena, we see it as kind of, there was a downturn within the industry. The majors pulled out. And then, you know, the musicians, the raza, you know, we came back to our own sort of record labels, our own radio stations, our own, you know, do it yourself, as Dan was saying. So how do you think we're at this right now, Max? I think that Conjunto music and Tejano music in general is still at for the last 25 years or more at this, independent labels we're recording ourselves, aren't we, Max? The major labels aren't here, and we're doing a lot of this just ourselves.
Yeah, I found, there was all the major labels that were recording Tejano Conjuntos and Tejano bands and so forth in the 90s, and there was a big boom then. And now it's, we find ourselves recording ourselves, like our own, like me personally, I have my own home studio that I've had to invest, because to go record, the record labels would pay for the studio, they would pay for the production, they would pay for the manufacturing of the CDs or whatever, and so now it's that's not there anymore, so we have to independently do it ourselves. And so, like during the pandemic, I've had to keep going, to keep surviving, because this is what I do for a living, is music. I've always done, that's all I've ever done, this is my job. I don't clock into a time clock or whatever every day, whatever. Music is all I've done. And I've been blessed to have been able to survive and pay my bills or whatever. But going back to the question, I've had to result into getting my own studio, my home studio, and that's where we record all our music. And like I said earlier, Jerry, the KDA is, that's our radio station. That's our home, man. That's our. If it wasn't for KDA and stations like that, man, it would. Who's going to play our music? We're fortunately sometimes NPR radio will play us, but the big Tejano stations won't play us. But our home stations, they're the ones that play us. And like you said earlier, you have to have a good production too. You can't, you have to take pride in your recording and who you are, your identity, to make that shine, your identity to shine and to have good music and pronounce the lyrics right and, and so forth. And just a good recording in general that's going to be played on the radio, that's just going to say, hey, look, that's us, or that's me, or whatever, and that sounds good, and so forth. Then people are liking it and they're calling in, and requesting your songs or whatever. And so it's it's changed a lot, but it's like resorting back to the way they had to do it back then. Back in the days when the pioneers didn't have the major labels behind them, and some eventually did, but like our Huli was one that preserved the conjunto culture and the music, whatever, and the recordings, as well as now the Smithsonian. They do that as well. But that's a tough one, man. It's a tough one to survive in this industry, and but it's thank God that we're able to. The music's still alive. It's there, and people love it. It's an attraction. It's in our blood. It's part of our culture, and it's important for us to preserve this and to have the younger generation to keep them interested and get going, and the culture and the community come together and support.
And maybe it was good that the major labels pulled out, because we had to come back into our own raza to do it ourselves, and maybe we didn't have the pressure of this catering to these big labels and wanting to record what they wanted instead of what we wanted. Right?
Yes, you'd have producers. They'd assign a producer to you, and they'd make you do something that you're not. Hey, this music isn't what we call cookie cutter. It's from the heart. It's what we're feeling on stage, and what we play is we want to make the people feel what we're feeling in our heart. Like Ray Charles said, music is an expression of a feeling. So whatever we're feeling, we're gonna make. That's what we want for you to feel, is what we're feeling. And I like alegre. I like happy music. That makes. I want to play music that's gonna make you want to get up and dance, or want to tap your foot or whatever. Alegre style of music, and so those producers and stuff would want you to. Oh no, you gotta. And so you're not really being yourself, It's what they want, and they say, okay, just record the intro, record the midro, and the outro, and then we'll just repeat it all over again. It's like, you know.
Linda, do you want to add something to that as a longtime recording artist and musician and vocalist?
Yes, Juan, I wanted to say that I got to record at Marroquin Recording Studio in Alice. It was in the backyard of my house where we lived, my mom and dad. It was just a one-bedroom little house. And I remember my siblings. I had two brothers and one sister, and we slept in the living room. There was beds, not just a couch, but there was also beds in the living room. And behind our house was Marroquin Recording Studio. And I remember recording in there. There was one microphone in the center of the room, a tiny little room. And, you know, if anybody made a mistake, we had to start all over again. And the crazy thing was that the windows were open because they didn't have air conditioning back then. I mean, I'm talking 1964. Okay, I was 7 years old. And you could hear the rooster crowing in the back, and also the dog barking and stuff, so we'd have to start all over again, yeah. And I remember looking through the little window, you know, while my father y los Guadalupanos, you know, were recording, you know, because you had to be really, really quiet. And to think that amazing recordings came out of that little studio, and that was under Ideal Records. And I remember my dad was under contract, and then I was blessed with the opportunity to record with Paulino Bernal's label. It was Bego, then it was Bernal. And he used to do caravanas de artistas de aquí de Texas y también de Mexico. So I got to tour all over the United States and parts of Mexico with, you know, Los Dinos, Carlos Guzmán, Los Relámpagos, Tony de la Rosa, you know, todos los grandes. Of course, my dad and I was just a little kid, a little girl, you know, performing in theaters and arenas and the Hollywood Palladium and just huge places. I even got to go to Disneyland, you know, at the age of 8 years old, which a little girl from Alice, you know, little chicanita, was just like, I was just in awe, you know, it was just, I couldn't believe it. But thanks to big record company like, you know, Bernal, that took us under their wing. And I remember the contract, I still have a copy of it, and I remember we were getting 7% of the sales back then. And sure enough, you know, I got to record with Dina Records here at SAS Recording Studio de Joey Lopez, Canelo, and also with Rick Garcia, Hacienda Records. So after a while, yeah, the only route to go was to become, you know, your own independent recording, and I established Escobar Records, and yes, it's very expensive. I mean, I don't have a studio like Max does, so I had to go and pay the hourly rate, and then pay, you know, for the marketing, pay for the manufacturing, for everything. And then back when we were little, I remember my dad used to get the box of 45s. We used to go pick it up at the bus station, and we'd go, you know, for every little town. My dad used to say, just look for the antenna, mija, just look for the antenna. And we'd go there, yeah, and we'd get a radio interview, and they'd play our music, and that was the way to go. But let me tell you, in the 90s, it wasn't that way, and it's been very difficult for us, and I'm just thankful to God that I've been able to still, you know, perform and preserve and record conjunto music, and thanks to radio stations like KEDA and K-Rob and others, you know, even the internet stations, you know, that still play my music and my dad's music. So I'm very grateful to each and every one of y'all. But yeah, it's been tough.
Thank you, Linda. I know we have a lot of questions, so I think I'm going to go ahead and open it up, because I think for people that have questions, we'll probably be talking about the things that I would be asking or somebody else. So Lucero, what did you want to ask?
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Can you hear?
Okay,
Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry, can't hear myself. Okay, my name is Lucero Saldaña. I'm an educator, a scholar for music as well, and an activist, and thank you for everything that y'all do. Working in the public school systems, I try to definitely incorporate music within any school I'm at, and I was very blessed that I actually co-founded the Bond conjunto group in Bonham Academy. I don't play conjunto music, but I advocated for conjunto. I told my principal and I said, listen, I have a dream, and my dream is to have a conjunto class at a middle school that I work at. Yeah. And it happened in 2020, which is COVID, which, obviously they didn't do it in person, they did it virtually, but it happened. Luckily, SAISD, I used to work there, SAISD founded the group and obviously got funds to get 20 accordions, and 5 accordions, 25 accordions. 5 accordions actually went to teachers that wanted to learn how to play conjunto, and then 20 of them obviously went to the students. I felt like I'm a researcher, right? I'm a scholar, pero también I'm in this table because my role at Bonham was family and community engagement specialist. And what I did was I promoted it. I actually made a TikTok for our students so they could sign up because I knew TikTok was the way to go. It was 2020, everybody's watching TikTok. So I used our mascot and le puse el acordeón and I, did all the music and stuff. And within less than 2 weeks, we filled up those classes. We filled up those classes. So my question is, how, as a community, how can we support our schools? And how can we, level up? I know Mariachi has a UIL competition. How can we have a UIL conjunto competition so that way conjunto is in our schools?
You want to answer that, Cristina?
Actually, the ones who are leading the way in that area is the Rio Grande Valley. They are, the instructors in the school programs there are starting to organize and create the infrastructure for UIL conjunto competitions, because here's the thing, that there's all kinds of rules, that are not made for folk music and vernacular music, like needing to have sheet music, okay, for UIL competition, for the band, orchestra, even mariachi. They have to, the instructors have to submit the sheet music that the students are going to play. Well, that doesn't exist in conjunto music, right? And but they're doing it. They're figuring it out and they're writing down the sheet music. Somebody who's leading the way in that is Juan Longoria down in Los Fresnos. And so they're starting to do it, and they're the ones that kind of have the critical mass in the Rio Grande Valley, because there's so many schools now. Now there's something like 14 different towns in the Rio Grande Valley and school districts that have conjunto music programs. So I think they're going to be the leaders in that. Well, they are the leaders in that. And then they also organize our own competitions, outside of the UIL system. And they've had to struggle, also advocate with their principals. I know I've been kind of in the journey with them for years. When some of them would ask me, Texas Folklife kind of has that role when, some of these instructors in the schools will say, hey, can you come with me and talk to my principal? Because if they see somebody from Austin, that says that, oh, this is important, this is good, they'll listen, right? So I found myself in a lot of meetings with principals in the schools. So I think that is going to come from them, and then San Antonio, we have some champions out there, like you, South San High School, it also has a conjunto group, and just kind of organizing and getting that critical mass going.
Yes.
I mean, this is not to rain on anyone's parade, but I just want to say one anecdote and then say something against competition. And the anecdote is La Jolla. Actually, Christine and I went down there and talked to, what's his name?
Amancio Cecilio, Chilo Garza.
Yeah, Chilo, and Don Chilo. And so he pointed out that they don't even teach accordion there because all the kids show up and they are already very good on accordion. So what they teach are all the other instruments, and they teach band management. But I mean, they literally do not teach anybody how to play because all the kids are better than, any of the instructors. But I mean, and this is not, I mean, like the big squeeze, and I've known Cristina for a long time, and we've had this kind of conversation, but I mean, conjunto's not competition is not the point of conjunto music. competition is not the way all these other players always came up. They did kind of mano-a-manos for people who were dancing. And it's not really that competitions are bad, but I don't think it's the only solution, because if you just train kids to do well in competitions, then they're missing kind of the value of music, which is not necessarily a competitive thing. It's as Max was saying, it's an emotional thing. It's a social thing. And so it's for families. And so, but teaching kids to play, that is absolutely what has to be done, but not necessarily steering it towards competition. And Juan Juan Longoria has talked about that for the reason that it's very constrained. Look what happened to jazz music. Jazz music is a music of the brothel, of the bar, of the street. Nobody plays jazz anymore except in universities and in kind of places where it doesn't exist. I mean, except in New Orleans. But the rest of the place, jazz is a conservatory music. And conjunto is not a conservatory music, it's an anti-conservatory music. It's a music of the people. So that, I mean, not to be a curmudgeon, but that's one perspective on the kind of way to approach a sustainable kind of program.
If I can say something, there's also, from the Texas Commission of the Arts, there's grants that you can apply for too, some organizations to help in the schools and stuff to, you know, I think, what was it, just maybe about 4 months ago, we were able to get a grant for teaching, well, we just, you know, went to the different schools in the Valley, and I think we went to like from third, fourth, fifth, sixth graders all the way to the high schools, and we did like 2 weeks of a residency, you know, going to different schools in the Valley and stuff, and they do have, you're right, they do have conjunto programs as well as mariachi programs, which is really cool, and I would love to see that spread out through Texas, through to San Antonio, to Austin, through, you know, different parts of Texas would be awesome. But there's grants that you can, you know, apply for, you know, from the Texas Commission of the Arts too.
Isn't Alvaro del Norte from Piñata Protest teaching? Is that at Bonham?
Yes, he is. And I just want to state, I no longer work there, so I would love to write a grant,
Yeah.
but I'm no longer at that school. So I felt like I was a huge advocate for conjunto at that school, and I hope Alvaro, you know, carries on that baton.
He's
for
in
sure.
the elementary level, right?
No, he's in middle school.
Middle school.
He's in middle school,
At
We were
Bonham.
in the talks of actually doing elementary because our Bonham families at the time really loved the idea of conjunto in middle school, that everybody was asking whenever we had new families come in. They're like, so when are you going to start it at the elementary level? I'm like, hold on, we just started at middle school.
Yeah.
Like, let us have, you know, a few years in middle school. But since I'm no longer at the school, I felt like, you know, I was a very strong advocate. You know, we found the funding. I wish I could, I wanted to write a grant, but I just couldn't.
There's still time. Some
Yes.
other questions or comments from the audience, if you want to move up to one of the microphones aquí. We appreciate that. Pásale. You have a question, San Juana?
I'm kind of old school, and I like CDs. And in fact, I was on a quest to find this three or five disc CD player, and everybody kept saying, "Why are you looking for a CD player when you can just download all your music?" Because maybe I want to hear Marcos Orozco over and over and over again, right? Okay, so anyway, what are you doing? Because I know the money would come from the CDs, right? The money comes from every time they play the song on the radio. My brother's a musician, so he would always go ching ching every time his song came on. What are you doing? I really don't even know how to phrase this question, but what are you doing about the social media where everybody's downloading and you can't make any money? How does that work?
Well, there's the only way that you can get royalties is if you have an original composition, original song that you've written and registered, and it gets airplay from the radio stations, and it's just a small percentage of I can't even remember what it is, man. What is it?
I don't know. Just know I get my check.
So many radio spins on an original song that you wrote. So many radio spins will you know get accumulate small amounts of money. But if it's a big hit, then yeah, it can get up there. The the YouTubes and stuff like that, they're now starting to pay some kind of royalties, but not, it has, like I said, on original music, you know. If you just go film somebody and put it out on YouTube, you're not gonna, there's no royalties in that. And it's very small.
It's okay, I'm sorry, Max. Also, through the digital platforms, you have to, of course, purchase, annually for them to sell your music so that people can download it, and then they send you, maybe 5 cents a song or whatever. So again, I would say it's a very small percentage. It's not like you can go to the dances and sell your CDs for $10, $15, $20 anymore, because now all the new cars don't have CD players, so that's a downfall for us. But yeah, it's gotten very, very, very difficult.
I think they ought to put turntables in cars, man, because vinyl's coming back.
Oh, yeah.
Do y'all want to talk anything about the radio and in regard to that question at all, Jerry or Rudy?
Well, on the CDs to be played, like they said, there's hardly in the car anymore. But a lot of musicians, I see them, they go into little flash drives and they put them in their car. And a lot of them have both CDs and the flash drives, which is the MP3s. So that's the only way now to stop copying. That's very hard. The copying, it's always been. There's people that actually live off of that, and it doesn't sound good at all. And I don't know why people buy it, but I wouldn't. And back in the day, I don't know if they still do it or not, but the CDs are coming from the recording studios. They normally have a bug in it. And if you download it, it messes up your computers. And we were one of them. I just bought a brand new computer, and we were going to dub it so we could put it on the rotation, and holding below, the whole computer went haywire. So, so it does work, but not everybody does that. I don't know what it is, but it's like the digital recording.
The master
Yeah.
is the one that.
Yeah.
If you don't make
Could you get the mic, Linda? Just
something about if you don't make duplications off the master, then it's not going to play.
Correct.
You cannot make a duplication off a duplication.
Correct. Yeah, that's
Yes.
right, and that happened to us. And the other man said, "Boss, Papa, you just bought this computer, but we were just downloading music to put it in an airplane, So now what we do is we ask everybody to either email it to us or to bring a copy, try a bug or something, So, but that's very hard to control, ma'am. It's very hard to control. That was your question, right? How to stop doing the copies and that's what ¿me entiendes? So.
Yeah, because now you have all those streaming services, right?
Yeah, it's even worse now. And now YouTube, there's a lot of people that put it on YouTube. They just record the whole song on YouTube. You just see the picture of Linda or Max there. You hear the song. This is my guy, and then somebody else gets the credit for it. I'm like, wow, But that's not an ending.
Did you have a question, ma'am?
I did. Hi, my name is Veronica. It's an honor to be here with this panel. It's honestly amazing information. So I'll start off with a comment, I guess, and they'll flow into my question. So like Mr. Guadalupe, my family I was born in Conjunto. I love it. I'm from Alice, a little small town, and Conjunto is extremely a lifestyle, culture experience you have to have. So like Flaco, Chano, Rene Jocelyn, Tony de la Rosa, you name it. We've been to Los Dos Ibertos, my favorite. anyways, I've been to the dances. Dancing is our love language of music. That's how we get to express ourselves. My children now, we keep Conjunto very strong in our family. We make dances just to dance with live music to keep it alive. Our family is known for dancing. My children came musically inclined because their father's family plays music and composes music for like high schools. I think King High School. The thing is, they didn't do Conjunto or Tejano music. Now I'm teaching my children music. So we have drums, we have the bass, we have a guitar, they play piano. Now we had the addition of accordion. Of course, and when I moved to San Antonio about 2 years ago, I couldn't find Conjunto. I know it was in the pandemic time, but it wasn't like I could go find me a dance, just like I could go to Corpus, to Kingsville, or to my local little place. Tejano was the thing, or Norteño. So like my question is, now that I'm teaching my children the history and the cultural, they're growing to be a part of it. That's all they know is that kind of music as well with their new age music, where they listen to rap and everything, rock, how we all discussed. how, as a parent, like you said, would be the most encouraging to support your children with music and the cultural experience that comes with it? How can I, as a mother, be able to help produce this music to continue through them? I know we don't have record labels. I'm not trying to look for a record label. Most likely, like my daughter Mariel is a 12-year-old, and she could literally lay her music and produce it, and it freaks me out. People who hear it really freak out. So it's like, San Antonio is new to me. Where are the outlets for students besides like the Squeeze Box and some community, which I would love to help personally, be able to like kind of develop that encouragement in producing music that it's new, but also like paying homage to what music we grew up on. You know, of course, you know, it would be nice to hear a girl sound like Flaco Jimenez or, you know, Tony De La Rosa, because I can hear that melody in a polka. And I, you know, write a paper in college about how, you know, the accordion came into Tejas and how is that going to be influenced by the Germans. But how can I do this in the time that we are in?
How can you do it in the what?
In the time that we're in now. Like, you know how we have the Rio Grande Valleys going, like, they're doing amazing with starting a culture in like their schools and bringing curriculum. Here we don't have that necessarily. We'll have to find these outreach communities to get the kids to kind of be more involved. How can I get my kids more involved in this program? That since we want the kids to come play.
You can put your radio station on KDA radio for one.
Done. I've already got that
You
done.
can take them to bailes donde tienen
Done.
música, no parques, and now that it's
Grandkids
coming
dance.
back again after the pandemic, right? Support, buy music, CDs or vinyl now is coming back also. Does somebody want to jump in
Or
here?
you could use reverse psychology, put an accordion there, a bajo sexto, a bass, and a drum set, and tell them, don't touch that.
But you know, honestly, my kids are not, they play every day because they want to. I don't have to force anything. So it's like the minute I hear them playing the piano or playing the bass or the guitar, the electric guitar, or you know, the accordion now, but it's like brand new because it's something like we dance to. I could hear polka and hear accordion all day long, but it was something brand new to like bring into the family for these kids. But now we don't have music sheet, which
Yeah.
I did voice to my daughter. Learn how to write notes for conjunto music. It's something that's very important.
So they're interested though, right? They're
Oh,
interested?
they're completely interested.
Are they playing Tejano Conjunto?
Well, the thing is they play renditions of any music. So if we put on something like Amor Eterno, she wants to hear it by ear and want to like play it. So if I hear a song that's just like a simple on the bass, you know, hitting the drums and keeping that tempo of a traditional conjunto song, not necessarily Tejano, but conjunto.
Yeah, conjunto.
Yeah, it has its own sound.
I would definitely. I would say register them into a great program here in San Antonio, ran by Rudy Lopez, called the Conjunto Heritage Taller.
Okay.
And I think he's sitting right over there, right, Rudy?
Okay, that's perfect. Yes, because I'm.
Yes, and
yes.
they teach accordion and bajo sexto.
And bajo sexto.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
That's
what
a
I
good
wanted
program.
to know.
That's
Was
a very
because
good
y'all did support. Y'all were saying the parents should support their
Yeah, that's
kids to learn the culture, and we already do it by music, by dancing. So I'm like, now it's like brand new. Like my kids are like the first within our family that are actually playing instruments. My uncles played behind, you know, around, and they, you know, joined every band that came through, like Chano or you know Rene Jocelyn, come and play in the back of the house, behind a fire. But now it's like I can see my kids that. They really have something. I don't know, like they just have the ear for music, and
If I
like,
may
what can I do?
add something,
Yeah.
your kids are going to be just fine. If they have you as a mom, you know, being so intentional about teaching this music, you know, so you're already doing a lot.
Yeah. And I just want to keep that alive, and I'm glad that my kids love it. They hear it and they know it's grandpa and grandma's music. My parents grew up dancing boleros in every style. But anyways, I just appreciate all the information. I really look forward to at least trying to be some kind of activist. It's like my brother. He's in Michigan. We're Chicano proud. He loves to follow music to all the way Midwest America to Chicago. It's completely alive over there. My brother writes and researches constantly. I'm the sister just wanted to dance. But at this point, I have children who love music. I literally can see that they can play this. So yeah, I just wanted to get some more information on how I can get them involved with that.
Rudy,
I think
and we
he's
can
got a
talk
business
afterwards.
card there, right, Rudy?
Yes. Thank you, guys.
I think we have
appreciate
another
it.
question here. Thank you
you.
for your work and for your support. It's very important.
Howdy, my name is Christian. I just wanted to ask you guys, I hope it's not like outside of the scope of this, but I was kind of curious about what, before the polkas and the accordions and stuff, where did like the corrido come from, and like how did it develop in Mexico and here in Texas? How did it develop differently on both sides of the river?
Tal vez Luis, tú has escrito sobre el corrido también,
Ok.
¿verdad?
¿Habla español?
Sí.
Ah, ok.
Sí, mi pregunta es cómo, dónde vino el corrido?
Sí,
El género del
no, sí
corrido
lo
en
entendí,
España.
pero yo le quería contestar en
sí.
español.
Bueno.
Sí, ¿de dónde viene el corrido? Es una buena pregunta. Un gran académico del Valle, que fue don Américo Paredes, quien fue maestro de mi maestro, él proponía que el corrido se había desarrollado más fuertemente al norte de la frontera nueva de Estados Unidos en la segunda mitad del siglo XIX, más fuertemente que en México. Es lo que propone, es la propuesta de Américo Paredes, quien fue un gran estudioso del corrido. Tiene su famoso libro With His Pistol in His Hand, con su pistola en la mano, ¿verdad? Que analiza un corrido y es un libro extraordinario, ¿no? Que sigue siendo referencia a pesar de que se escribió en los años 50, ¿no? Hace un buen tiempo. Y yo estoy de acuerdo con esta teoría que propone Paredes. Los corridos más antiguos, aunque no nos guste a los mexicanos, están, bueno, que se conocen, ¿verdad? Porque a lo mejor en México había antes, pero seguramente los mexicanos que vivían acá antes de la anexión y que luego se separa, ¿verdad?, de México, fueron los primeros que precisamente propone el que por una cuestión de una intensificación del nacionalismo, dice Paredes, se intensifica el nacionalismo de los mexicanos que viven ahora de este lado, ¿verdad? Y que pues ellos quieren seguir siendo mexicanos. Es debido a esta intensificación del nacionalismo es que se comienzan a componer más corridos y que de hecho pues son los más antiguos que se conocen, ¿verdad? El corrido de los 500 novillos, ¿verdad? Es uno de los más antiguos que se conoce, y luego pues varios de la zona de la franja fronteriza, ¿verdad? Pero ya de este lado de Estados Unidos son los corridos más antiguos que propone él que hay, ¿verdad? Y realmente pues no se han encontrado anteriores. Un maestro mío, Cuauhtémoc Esparza Sánchez, quien fue un historiador de Zacatecas, él proponía que el corrido más antiguo era anterior a los que menciona Paredes, y se trata del corrido, de un corrido de 1810, lo ubica más o menos el maestro Esparza, y que encontró en un manuscrito en Guadalupe, Zacatecas, pero yo personalmente no creo que fuese que se cantara como a manera de corrido, ¿verdad? Yo creo que eran unas coplas que se cantaban de alguna otra manera, pero no a la manera del corrido, y no tiene las características además del corrido, así que pues lo más probable es que el corrido se haya desarrollado más bien de este lado. Era un poco más larga tu pregunta, había otra cuestión que preguntaste, perdón.
Ajá, no, solo es eso y cómo se desarrolló diferentemente aquí y en México. O sea, cómo son diferentes los corridos y el conjunto, por ejemplo, a la música norteña del norte de México.
Pues yo creo que tienen mucha relación. A mí me gustó mucho un video que hizo el maestro Juan y Cristina, invitando precisamente al simposio, y que hablan todo en inglés, pero dice Cristina, una misma música. Me gusta mucho que dice en español, ¿verdad? Que las músicas es una misma, la de acordeón y bajo sexto, y entonces los grupos de acordeón y bajo sexto muy tempranamente toman al corrido, ¿verdad? El maestro Guadalupe menciona que y tiene razón que originalmente la música de acordeón y bajo sexto era exclusivamente instrumental, ¿verdad? Comienzan con las polcas, las redobas, chotís, mazurcas, los valses, ¿verdad? Toda esa música europea que de hecho fue una música que se escuchó en todo Occidente, ¿verdad? En todo el mundo occidental. Y posteriormente, cuando se comienza a cantar, uno de los primeros géneros que toma el conjunto de acordeón y bajo sexto es el corrido, precisamente. Pero sí hay muchos corridos que son muy característicos de ciertas regiones de México, ¿verdad? Hay algunas propuestas, ¿verdad? Alguno de los más tempranos investigadores pues fue Vicente T. Mendoza en México, quien publicó sus libros desde los años 30, 40, ¿verdad? Del siglo pasado, y que él tiene unas teorías muy interesantes que divide al corrido como por regiones en México, ¿verdad? Y bueno, sería muy largo de comentarlo, porque sí hay muchas regiones culturales dentro de México, ¿verdad? Y yo siento que el sur de Texas, como decía Alan Lomax, pues es profundamente mexicano, sobre todo en la música, decía este gran investigador Alan Lomax.
But they say, Dr. Americo Paredes, that I studied with him at UT Austin back in the early 70s, says that the reason that the corrido developed here on Texas, on the border, in la frontera with Mexico and Texas, was because of the conflict of cultures here when the Anglo came into Texas, and then the Alamo here happened, and then, you know, they captured Santa Ana and he sold Texas. So this confluence and conflict of cultures, you know, and the racism that existed here, because a lot of the early corridos, then you see the Mexicanos defending their rights against Anglo-American injustice, right? And those where this corrido tradition comes from, that was sort of con su pistola en la mano, ¿no? Defendiendo sus derechos y los derechos de todos los mexicanos against the Anglo racism and injustices right here on the border. So yeah.
And there was corridos in the Revolution too, from the talk about the
and that came
Revolution.
later, right?
Yeah,
you know, in fact, that's
the
why
Mexican Revolution, you know.
Right.
So there's a lot of corridos, well, there's so many corridos in different styles, whatever. Like Valentín de
They
la
said
Sierra
that
was
the
an
first
old
one
corrido.
that Americo mentioned that they had, most of, but not all of it, was el corrido de Juan Nepomuceno Cortinas. Juan Cortina was about in 1849, right after the Mexican-American War. So that was like 50 years before the greater Mexican Revolution corridos, right? That was in the mid-1800s. And then the early 1900s, also corrido that he wrote about con su pistola en la mano, Gregorio Cortés and those types. Other questions or comments? Roberto, will you step up to the microphone, por favor?
I don't want to burst the bubble, but excuse me, ya estoy muy viejo, I can't stand up no more. But the question was, where did the corrido derive from, or where's the origin of the corrido? And so it's hard to explain because conjuntos play corridos. That's what they do. Some of them do, right? Now they're not corridos, but you have to ask yourself the question of the form, the corrido form. It has a form. It's four lines and then 8 syllables to a stanza. Okay, so that originated in Spain in the 10,000, or was it during the Crusades? Okay, but that was 16 lines to a symbol. The first one was el Baviesca by it's called El Cid. But that's where the corrido, and the corrido form is called. They got them from what they call a harcha. It's a Jewish and Hebrew poetry. That's what the origin of that. That's what I read, and that's in Pablo Castellano's book.
And they say that the corrido form here, from the Espanol side, came from the décima y los romances también, that are kind of that rhyme scheme, but it developed into something different here in the United States on the border.
Yeah.
But you know, part of, there have been ballads, you know, corridos are ballads, right, sung, tell a story, right? But they've been ballads throughout history of humanity, and claro que el español, las tradiciones, y también de las tradiciones indígenas aquí también, the oral tradition and the poetry tradition that was kind of mixed up with the español to create something new here, the new corrido, a new world corrido tradition. Yeah. Questions or comments? Somebody else?
Juan,
yes, sir.
I just want to add a little bit more to that because, again, I do want to note that one of the major differences between the corridos from here and Mexico is the racial conflict between Anglos and Mexicans. You don't find that in the northern corridos. The other thing is that a lot of times when people talk about corridos, how conjuntos play corridos, it's important to note that Tejanos playing conjunto music did not record corridos until after World War II because the music was instrumental. And the singing in instrumental music, whether it be orquesta, Betovia, for example, is all instrumental, or whether it be conjunto, it was all instrumental. So the idea that conjuntos tejanos played corridos wasn't realistic. The corridos were played by the people in the families and gatherings where they picked up the guitars and they carried the corrido tradition in the community, but it wasn't through dancing, through the dance groups. The dance groups didn't have lyrics until after World War II.
Or even the recordings, you're saying.
Sí, el maestro tiene razón. Comienza el conjunto con la música instrumental y después son los corridos. Pero desde el siglo XIX ya se tocaba, como dice, con una guitarra, ¿verdad? O dos guitarras, que era muy común, ¿verdad? Que hubiera dos guitarras. Y respondiendo también al señor que comentaba sobre la estructura de los versos del corrido, que son heptasílabos y que sí hay efectivamente una estructura de la métrica literaria, ¿verdad? Pero también es interesante que los corridos, en su forma musical, en la forma que toman en la música, ya a la hora de tocarse, pueden tomar muchas formas diferentes. Pueden ser como un vals, ¿verdad? O pueden ser como una polka, exactamente. O sea, pueden tomar diferentes formas musicales y es lo que es fabuloso del corrido y que por eso ha sobrevivido tanto tiempo. Es esa adaptación, ¿verdad? Las formas musicales que puede lograr, ¿sí?
Yes, sir. You had a question?
It's kind of chiming on everything that y'all have kind of covered. I want to say hi. I'm Josue. I'm Josue Garcia, down from the valley. I'm from La Feria, Texas, a little small town right there by the border. Chiming in on a little bit of everything that's kind of touched, from different musics to the times to the fads. You're right. Fads have came and gone, and like Miss Cristina says, conjunto's always been kind of underground. Coming from the valley, back in 2014, we decided to do a pieza of a 356 marching band. Y'all chimed on it, Mr. Rudy, I believe, chimed on it before. We did Las Nubes. I was that kid on the accordion back in 2014. Hablando de eso.
Where's little Joe?
We spoke earlier. But chiming back into all of that, this music is very much not dead at all. 24 hours later, I have a call from Mr. Rocky Hernandez. I check on Facebook, and that video had 1 million followers and 1 million views in 24 hours. So you're talking about a whole lot of Mexicans across the world. We had people from Germany, we had people from Hawaii, we had people from all over the world talking about Las Nubes and that rendition. To this day, there's now the third accordionist, and they're still doing it there in La Feria. Hablando de conjuntos programs, we have Mr. Chilo, we have Juan Longoria, we have Santiago Castillo, we have Juan Antonio Perez. They used to play back with Chore Perez. Or Juan Antonio Tapia, perdón, I'm sorry. But those conjunto programs are very much alive. However, there's a little bit of a distinction now of what we see. Like mentioned earlier, there's fads, there's times and gones of music changing and evolving. With younger generations, conjunto is no longer the conjunto of what it once was. And there's always going to be a talk. I'm a huge conjunto lover. I don't play it as much anymore, but I love it to death. And as y'all know, conjunto in the valley is not the same as conjunto in San Antonio. Conjunto San Antonio is not the same thing as Conjunto in Corpus or Alice. The Alice is not the same as DFW or Houston. It's a different market, it's a different feeling, but I'll tell you one thing, it's the same compás and everyone has it.
The heartbeat.
The heartbeat of the band.
And that's what gives me a lot of hope, because I don't think that there have been as many conjunto programs in the schools, like in the, Cristina said, there's maybe 12 or 14 programs in the Valley. They even have a couple of them that I saw, elementary schools that had or have had conjunto programs, and community-based programs, you know, like the Conjunto Heritage Taller, the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center, the Narciso Martinez Cultural Arts Center, that exist. And there aren't that many, but it's growing, right? And so I think more young people such as yourself, and this, including the Acordeones Las Nubes with the school band down there in the Valle. And I was one of those million people that have viewed that tape, and it brought me a lot of pride, you know, and I think it brought all of our raza a lot of pride, you know. This is the music that we created, right, and we gave to the world. And it's good to see it reflected in our schools. We need more of that in the curriculum, in the textbooks, and in special programs. But I think that because as a result of 40 years of classes that we began here at the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center, and now the taller, and now the schools, and little by little, like Bonham, like Southside High School in San Antonio, we're getting them in the schools, that it gives me a lot of hope, right? That again, that this music is never going to die, and I see more young people taking up the accordion in bajo sexto than I've ever seen in the history, so that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, so going back to the question on that, I appreciate that. How do we unite the form of, as we were speaking earlier, that we really didn't get a chime on, conjunto norteño and conjunto, traditional conjunto? And the reason that I say that is because down in the Valley, I can speak for all of the young boys and girls coming out, 70% of those kids have norteño in their brain. And they know that as conjunto norteño. So I'm talking about a group like myself. We come up here to San Antonio, and we're straight norteño. We go down into the Valley, and we're straight conjunto. So no somos mexicanos, ni somos gringos, ni somos gringos, ni somos mexicanos. Like Selena said in the movie, that's the battle that a lot of bands come out dealing with. And I'll give you an example of why these kids know who it is. Coco Rayao no es de Rubén Vela. However, you can go to California, you can go to Florida, you can go for a band that is more popular right now, a Grupo Firme, charging in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're gonna know the rendition of Coco Rayao de Rubén Vela with Enrique Flaco Naranjo of the California Fields singing that song. So how do we unite that conjunto norteño and that conjunto into one to become one big Texan United States family?
Isn't that why Juan Longoria called his band Conteño?
Conteño, that's exactly why.
Maestro Luis, he just wrote a book that's real interesting. I don't think anybody has ever really explored the relationship as well as he has between la música de conjunto norteño y la música tejana. ¿Quiere contestarle ahí un poquito, maestro?
Sí, gracias por la pregunta. Yo creo que ha habido algunos investigadores del fenómeno del conjunto, no quiero decir quién, ¿verdad? Pero sobre todo anglosajones, y no me refiero a anglosajón despectivamente, porque aquí está nuestro querido amigo Dan, ¿verdad? No, porque a veces se usa feo, ¿verdad? Se puede decir despectivamente. No, pero algún investigador por ahí que ha escrito sobre la música norteña quiere como resaltar que hay como un conflicto entre los músicos norteños y tejanos, y entonces incluso transcribe a score, a musical score, una partitura, escribe una partitura, ¿verdad? Para que transcribe de escucharla, para demostrar cómo es diferente la interpretación que hace un músico norteño y un músico tejano del mismo corrido. Pero bueno, yo aquí en mi libro que se publicó hace pues menos de un año, que nos está mostrando, gracias
Sí, muchas gracias. Que nos está, en mi libro propongo que si nos ponemos a buscar en México, o sea, ella dice, en Texas los músicos son como más, agresivos, ¿no? De alguna manera, más participativos, tocan más rápido y así varios elementos de la música. Y mientras que en México son como más tradicionalistas. Y pone el ejemplo de dos corridos, ¿verdad? Que interpreta un músico tejano y uno norteño, como para precisamente resaltar esa diferencia. Y ella, pues, bueno, el investigador, ¿verdad? Menciona que esos músicos, que también se habla de que hay un conflicto entre norteños y tejanos. Y bueno, lo que menciono en mi libro es que a las personas que yo entrevisté fue todo lo contrario. O sea, los músicos tejanos tienen un gran respeto por sus contrapartes que viven al otro lado de la frontera, como ellos tienen de los tejanos. O sea, hay una admiración mutua. Los músicos no están peleados entre sí, como algunos investigadores quieren hacernos creer, ¿verdad? No, no es cierto. Y yo propongo en mi libro, bueno, el investigador que propone que estos dos corridos son interpretados de manera diferente, pues yo le quiero decir que en México hay interpretaciones que yo he encontrado de grupos de la Huasteca de San Luis Potosí que son más, digamos, atrevidas que las que hacen los músicos tejanos, mientras que hay músicos tejanos que tienen interpretaciones más tradicionalistas, más tradicionales, traditional interpretation, que sus contrapartes mexicanos, ¿verdad? Entonces, yo creo que si nos ponemos a analizar a cada grupo, y como tú bien dices, o sea, el conjunto tejano es diferente en el Lower Valley y como es diferente al de Corpus, ¿verdad? Y son diferentes. Yo creo que eso es precisamente lo que le da la riqueza. Igual en México hay una gran riqueza de música, pero yo creo que ambas músicas pues es una sola música, ¿verdad? Como decía Cristina hace poco. Es una sola música, la música norteña y la tejana. Yo creo que no debería de existir como una preocupación de que una gane sobre la otra, ¿verdad? La diferencia, bueno, mencionaron que sí, tiene efectivamente la música norteña más promoción, ¿verdad? Tiene más dinero. Y yo creo que ahorita que precisamente la música norteña se está cargando mucho, se está yendo hacia el lado del bandeño, ¿verdad? O sea, que combina el acordeón con tuba de la banda sinaloense y otros instrumentos de la banda. Yo creo que ahí tiene que ver mucho el dinero del narcotráfico que está invirtiendo, lavando dinero en la industria discográfica, porque es la música que le gusta al narco, ¿verdad?
It's a different audience,
la banda.
por decir.
Sí somos, yo creo que una sola música, ¿no? Entre el conjunto norteño y el conjunto tejano en la región, pero hemos desarrollado distintos estilos por ambos lados también, ¿no? Y se reconocen los distintos estilos también. Hay distintos estilos en la música de conjunto norteño también, igual que hay distintos estilos y se reconocen los grandes estilistas de la música de conjunto tejano como Rubén Vela y Tony de la Rosa y Paulino Bernal, right? The conjunto Bernal, the style Esteban Jordán, right? You know, so you know, while we're the same sort of regional Mexican Tejano music, we've developed distinctive styles on both sides of the border, but we're one general music. Es acordeón y bajo sexto.
Yeah, and just like you said, with the styles of Tejano Conjunto in Mexico, there's the different styles también, like los rialeros del norte with a saxophone and accordion. That's norteño, you know, and there's they call intocable or la firme or whatever, norteño también, ¿verdad? But it's different styles. It's a different styles. But think about it, the songs that they're playing and the songs we're playing, most of them come from what? The mariachi, you know, the mariachi songs, you know, from the songwriters, Jose Alfredo Jimenez and those songwriters, you know, and stuff like that. So,
Juan, I feel Juan that the industry had changed back in the '80s. The format of the Hispanic from Mexican, back when Davila started back in '66, Raileros used to play, Fantasmas used to play, Flaco Jimenez used to play. There was no difference. There was no difference. My dad's place, Los Cachorros de Juan Berreal, my dad was the first guys who put the visas to bring him over here before his brother got killed and stuff like that, and then break. But there was no mixture. Entraron the programmers Americanos and feel this needs to be Tejano, and that's what hurt the Tejano industry, in my opinion. When they changed the way of Mexican music and Tejano music, but they left Tejano in the cold because we're all part of one. I bet if they would have left it together as Spanish, everybody here, sitting down here, will be enjoying the life that the Mexican regional has, because they departed Tejano to one side, lo dejaron afuera, you know, and it just went nowhere.
That's my question right there.
They should have left it. The programmers, the advertiser guys, the dollars, the agencies did away with Tejano format as well. That's why us Tejanos, there is no more Tejano stations. Nobody can figure it out. It's not a genius. There's no marketing money for the Tejano format. You put marketing money back to the format, I guarantee you everybody will shine. But quien controla? Some Jewish guy up there in New York. No, it's a Jewish guy. I can believe it's a Jewish guy that does all this stuff.
Univision controla aquí en los Estados Unidos también,
Yeah.
¿no?
You know, it's hard, Juan. If somebody, now they just, here lately in the past pandemic, they already released a little bit of the agency money to put on the local regional money. I had the best years ever on advertising money since the pandemic. Why? Because they needed to get the word across for the shots. The #1 station wasn't doing it. So they realized that all that money they were spending on the high dollar stations weren't getting anywhere. So they came back to the community town, and guess what? They responded. So that's what's going on with the music. Juan Berreal was no different than Flower Longoria. Now, the accordions are a little bit different. Now we have Horner for Conjunto, and we have, I don't know the other ones, the ones they use for Mexican, they're different. Different alley or stuff like that. And that's what makes a difference now. But for me, it's all the same. In Tocada, that's what they use. Tocada was a Conjunto station, a Conjunto band, you know that. I can't remember the name of it, but no, it was I think it was Muñoz, no? It was their family's deal. They were a Conjunto, and then they went into that. You know, they all start from Conjunto. So, but, you know, that's my opinion, guys.
I think we had a couple of quick comments here from Alejandro and Dan.
One thing that, and I love Queda, and the little stations I think are super important resources and legacy things. But one of the big shifts has been that everyone lives online, everyone who's young, and these bands do. And if you look at Mexican regional acts, they have incredibly robust digital presence and channels on YouTube, which are free to create, can make $10s, $20s, $30,000 US per month in advertising. And you know, and this is like some of the DIY guys who just film the bands. They can put the stuff up on YouTube. They get the advertising. So, and the bands put really a lot of effort into the production value. So, I mean, like it or not, a band nowadays, and you can speak to this, but a band nowadays has to be a digital presence. They have to make good videos, which you can make actually very cheaply with computers and good cameras. Everyone has an HD camera on their phone. You make an iPhone, make a high quality video, sounds good, put on YouTube, you own it. You don't need the labels. I mean, the labels used to do a lot, but sometimes they, you know, when they disappeared, it requires more hustle, it requires more work, it requires like different kind of creative muscles, but the reality is there are paths forward, and actually I mean, just from the perspective, you know, I listen to a lot of different stuff, love Conjunto music, I love norteño music, I love banda music. You look at the videos, reggaeton music, dembow music, this is music of poor people in working class cultures, and they make videos that reach hundreds of millions of views from people who like live in the barrio in the Dominican Republic. They just have a good camera, they're snazzy, they make good music. People want to watch it and listen to it. So that is a path. It's not, advertising money, but you get the money via YouTube. And then just one thing about the traditional, it's kind of following what Luis said, like some of these acts, we couldn't get them this year for the Norteño night, but there were these little, for other groups and playing, Hermanos Flores, Hermanos Soria, they're playing very hardcore traditional music influenced very much by the old instrumental records from the 30s. They're playing Redovas, they're playing just bajo and accordion, and they're putting it on YouTube. They don't have labels, and they have a presence, so that's a lot of it is the digital virtual world, so I will stop.
I know Rudy has one. We might have time for one more question because
Alejandro.
it's going to be 10. Sorry, Alejandro.
Thank you.
We'll get
I want to talk to Rudy. I haven't seen this guy in a while.
All right, how you doing, man? I just want to say that the bottom line is the bottom line. I went to the superintendent of the San Antonio Independent School District about 15 years ago here from Rio Grande City. And I said, you know what, we have a conjunto program and I'd like to bring it into the schools. What will it take? He says, I can't let that happen. We'd have to take money from the mariachi program, and that'll never happen. So it didn't. We taught at Bonham. Benny Medina had a class at Bonham, but it was after school. But I wanted to get it into the curriculum. I wanted to be part of the program. And he said, no. He said, I said, well, what if we bring our own money? He said, well.
There you go.
Yeah.
Don't take it away from the mariachi.
Yeah.
Let's raise some more money to have the conjunto program and the mariachi program too.
Well, anyway, that's what the conversation ended. And he said, we're not going to take money from the mariachi.
Maybe a quick question or comment.
Yeah, my name is Francisco Chapa with the Tejano 360 Network and the Tejano Music Recording Academy. And our organization just donated a bajo and an accordion to Southside High School to Ms. Bustamante's Conjunto class, which is an accredited class for conjunto music. Our organization, what we do, I've been given the opportunity to speak to many of the next generation of Tejano Conjunto musicians. And to every problem, there's always a root. And the solution is to pass it to the next generation, to keep our music alive, keep it going. But there is a root problem. And in speaking to a lot of the next generation, they're being told, like this young man just said, that's not Tejano, that's not Conjunto, that's not tradition. And that needs to stop, because every genre of music out there in the world has evolved, and yet somehow our music is being told to young people, that's not it. Teach them tradition, yes, but let them fuse whatever they want into it. Let them create, let them make it their own. We just had Little Joe Hernandez say how he created his style by fusing honky-tonk, rock and roll, blues, and he created his style. Now let's let these young kids create their style. One day, I guarantee you, just like the Navaida brothers, they will come back to tradition. They will, because they'll want to know, hey, I'm successful at this. How did it come about? They'll start to research, they'll look into it, and then they'll record it, a traditional album. They will. We just got to give them a chance. Let them do it. We need to stop telling the next generation, that's not it. It needs to stop. We need to encourage them and let them do what they need to do, and they'll come back. They'll always come home. They'll always come home. So, I'm sorry, there's not quite a question in there, but it was more like a statement.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, something I think about is that term tradition as well. And we use the term tradition. I think we know what it means, and we kind of kick it around. And I wouldn't want tradition as a term to be a way of excluding people. I think conjunto music is very inviting. I think it's also really important to really say, well, tradition. Even in conjunto, there's not a tradition. Are we talking about conjuntos from the 1920s, 1930s, where it was a bajo and accordion? Are we talking about the fiddle players who were playing in that style and having that kind of experimentation? Are we talking about when things got electrified? And you hear people talking about Bob Dylan playing this concert rock music and it blew everyone's mind. Well, that was everyone. All of a sudden you could plug in your amps and really blast the music, and now you got the bass and everything. But that's traditional music as well. And so I think that sense of innovation, the stuff you're doing, Max, let's have fun with it. Let's bring it, because those influences are there as well. And instead of thinking about it tradition, instead of thinking about it as a museum piece, you have a conjunto festival for 40 years that's provided the snapshot of people who were there at the beginning and people who learned from them and people who are playing the music now. And it changes every year. It's not in a museum. It's not sitting on a shelf somewhere. It's not a dusty record that someone takes out once a year. It's something that's living and something that's continuous.
Especially when you realize that conjunto music from the beginning is this fusion, this hybrid, this synthesis of the European accordion with the Spanish, Mexican bajo sexto, indigenous rhythms, blues, country, rock, jazz, cumbia, which is one of the most popular dance forms, along with the polka, is Afro-Caribbean, the Colombia base. So we fuse all of these world music influences into conjunto. It really is world music, It started out as a fusion music, so we shouldn't be saying, like the carnalito is saying right there, that's not conjunto music. Conjunto music are all of these things and more, and beyond, Maestro, couple of quick comments. I think they wanted to
Sí, en
close
relación a
off
este
here.
comentario rápido y ya para cerrar, agradecer de nuevo la invitación.
Porque tengo que ir al baño.
Sí, yo también.
Ya hace como media hora.
Yo también. No, nada más quería hacer un breve comentario acerca de este.
Will you take over, Cristina, for a little while?
Acerca de esta última participación. Solo quería comentar una idea muy bonita que tiene un gran historiador mexicano, que es Carlos Errejón Peredo, quien dice que la tradición es como un tesoro. La tradición es un tesoro, pero es un tesoro, dice, que va en un barco que es azotado por una tormenta. A veces hay que tirar una parte de ese tesoro para poder sobrevivir, ¿verdad? Y eso es importante. No hay que cerrarnos a que el conjunto no debe recibir influencias del jazz o del rock o del hip hop. Yo creo que lo enriquece. Todas las músicas es riqueza y no hay ninguna música que sea absolutamente pura. Todas las músicas tienen influencia de otras músicas. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Real quick before we close, just one quick thing I want to recognize and personally thank on behalf of all the musicians and everybody, like this gentleman was saying that they had some accordions and donated and so forth. And we have to recognize Mr. Gilbert Reyes from Honer, because he has been there and supported all this Conjunto Festival and all the schools and stuff, because when you get something accordion donated, it's going to come through him. And thank you for that, Gilbert.
Thank you to Gilbert and Honer, and thank you to Jerry Benavides and KDA, because they're one of the only ones that have been here for 42 years with the Tejano Conjunto Festival is KDA Radio.
Okay, we're wrapping it up. But what I want to say just really quickly, I wanted to acknowledge Gilbert too, and also Crystal Jones. I can't believe you're still here, Crystal, with the Department of Arts and Culture, the City of San Antonio, who is the biggest funder of the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center, and therefore the biggest funder of the Conjunto Festival as well. So thank you for being here, Crystal. And I am amazed that you guys are still here. You guys are the diehard fans, man.
Yeah.
You are geeking out on this conversation. I mean, we've been here 2.5 hours, guys, okay? Sitting here, listening to this.
Yeah, but we started late. Because little Joe.
No, we've been here now like 6 hours. Bring him back.
Is he still at the bookstore?
No.
We're still signing? We're going over there right now to the bookstore, because, we have various authors, Lupe and también el carnal Luis Díaz-Santana here. And just to briefly wrap up, we're going to continue across the street. I think we have a little refreshments over there too.
Poquito. Ya no hay mucho.
Ya se acabó.
Ya se acabó.
Well, just las gracias aquí a todos, a Guadalupe San Miguel, a Jerry Benavides, a Rudy Treviño, Linda Escobar, Max Baca,
Baca. I was going to say Max Bajo. That's your handle, your email. Max Baca, Luis Díaz-Santana Garza, Cristina Ballí, Alejandro Wolbert Pérez, Dan Margolies. Un fuerte aplauso para todos los panelists
Juan
here.
Tejeda.
And thank you for being here. And don't
Juan
forget,
Tejeda.
tomorrow we have the Conjunto Music and Film and Video Day starting at noon. It's free also. And then in the evening, a special platica with Hector Galan and Chris Strockwitz. Come out and check some of the conjuntos and films and videos tomorrow. And we continue Wednesday through Sunday at Rosedale Park. Las gracias. We'll see you across the street for get some book signed. Thank you. I need to go to the bathroom, man.